Life is complicated. I never thought I'd live like this.
No?
When the war came, I did bad things. And after the war, I thought nothing of doing bad things. I killed people, smuggled people, sold people.
And you don't worry about your soul?
Niko Bellic is a man burdened by a past that refuses to let him go. A soul torn between the weight of his sins and the desperate hope for redemption. He comes to America not merely enticed by his cousin Roman's grand promises of wealth, luxury, and a fresh start, but in search of something far more elusive: peace. The ghosts of his past have followed him across continents, whispering reminders of the bloodshed, betrayal, and shattered dreams that have shaped him. America, in his mind, represents a final chance to escape, to carve out a life where his history is forgotten, his debts are erased, and his conscience is at least unburdened. But the past does not loosen its grip so easily. Beneath his reunion with Roman lies another deeper purpose, one that has haunted him for over a decade. He seeks a man, an old comrade, one of the only other two survivors of an ambush that changed everything. A day where 15 men went into battle. A day where only Niko, Darko, and Florian emerged alive. Niko knew the truth of that day, that it was tainted by betrayal. He knew he wasn't the traitor, which leaves only two possibilities. And he spent years hunting for answers, for the name of the man who sold them out, the one responsible for the slaughter of his friends, and why. Yet the cruel reality of his new life in Liberty City is that the promise of a fresh start is as much of an illusion as the American dream itself. The streets are just as ruthless, the bloodshed just as constant, and his past, no matter how far he runs, always finds its ways back to him. Finding Darko or Florian will be no easy feat, and even if he somehow does manage to do it, the question remains: will the truth bring him the closure he craves, or simply push him deeper into the abyss he has spent his entire life trying to escape? Niko Bellic is a man defined by complexity, and so too are the reasons that led him to America. Beneath every choice he makes lies another, deeper motivation. Some he acknowledges, others he buries beneath cold pragmatism. As he would later confide to his cousin Roman, a part of him, or perhaps all of him, died the day his friends were slaughtered in that ambush. To Niko, the dead find closure, their suffering ends. It's the survivors who are cursed to carry the weight of the past, left to wrestle with the turmoil, the unanswered questions, and the scars that never truly heal.
War is where the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other. I was very young and very angry. Maybe that is no excuse.
To best understand Niko Bellic, we have to unravel the layers of his past and why he came to the United States in the first place, and break the game into three main sections: main events and the evolution of Niko's mentality and reasoning behind the actions he takes. Now, if we start at the beginning, predating the events of Grand Theft Auto 4, and look at the very reasons why Niko even came stateside, each reason is defined by war, betrayal, and the ghosts that refuse to let him go, or rather the guilt of his actions and the fact he survived when many of his friends didn't. Niko was born into a war-torn European country, shaped by violence from an early age, the origins of which are left mysterious and open to interpretation, with many in-game characters referring to him as Balkan, with there being hints of him originating from the country of Yugoslavia, and the language he speaks is often referred to as Serbian, or a blend of Serb-Croatian, which then causes a little bit of a geographical confusion of Eastern Europe as opposed to Yugoslavia, so I think his origins and the language he speaks can be a bit debatable. What is a bit more concrete is his upbringing was far from easy. His father, by Niko's own words, was a violent drunk, and his mother, a desperate woman clinging to hope in a world that seemed to offer none. By the time Niko was old enough to understand the world around him, it was already drowning in bloodshed. And like many young men from his homeland, Niko was thrown into a war, fighting for a cause that never truly mattered to him. What did matter to him was the men beside him, the brothers in arms who shared in the horror, the suffering, and the blind hope that they might one day escape. It's also worth pointing out the men Niko fought beside held a unique bond. They all grew up together, hailing from the same impoverished village. Niko's mother knew these men, and so too did Roman. And we know that because out of the few emails we get from Niko's mother in the game, which not only reflects her caring side in her broken English, it's quite apparent she has immense love for her son, who by her own words was defined by principle and seen as a man of action and respectable values, but she also names Florian Kravich, and that Niko had managed to find him. She also questions if Florian had managed to become a wrestler as he always wanted to be, and that he was a strange boy.
I can't stand it. I won't stand it. It's not fair. I'm just being me. Bernie!
Towards the end game, when Niko also reflects on his brothers that were killed and ambushed, Roman points out that they were his friends as well. So it was a very tight, close-knit village where everybody knew everybody. They weren't just friends. It was almost as if everybody was a little bit of an extended family. And so from that perspective, it makes all the more sense that his world came crumbling down the day his unit was ambushed. 15 men were set up. 12 of those 15 would perish that day. Niko was one of the 3 who survived. But the scars left behind weren't just physical, they were traumatic beyond repair. It was an event that completely altered his perception. Pain so immense and so tragic that he buried it deep down. The time for mourning was held off until he found the traitor, one of the other 2 men who had survived, who he managed to pinpoint as Florian Kravich or Darko Brevic. One of them had sold everyone out, and Niko would spend the next decade, 12 to 13 years, trying to uncover the truth. Why? That question alone could have defined his life, but it was only one of the demons haunting him. After the war, he and so many other previous soldiers were unable to land a job. And so, like many disillusioned soldiers, Niko turned to crime, with no real future, no purpose beyond his search for the traitor. And so, that led him into smuggling, working for a man named Ray Bulgarin, a vicious human trafficker with deep ties to organized crime. Niko handled smuggling operations for him, moving people and cargo across the Adriatic Sea. It was dangerous, dirty work, but in the chaos of that life, Niko would find a strange sense of direction. That would all end when one of Bulgarin's shipments was lost. Whether if it was due to bad luck, incompetence, or setup, Niko would never know. But to Bulgarin, it didn't matter. Someone had to pay, and Niko became the scapegoat. Knowing that there was no reasoning with a man as ruthless as Bulgarin, Niko ran. He'd spend some time drifting, taking mercenary jobs across Europe, all while still searching for the truth behind the ambush that haunted him since the war, seemingly the only thing keeping him going. Then came the opportunity, a way out. His cousin Roman had moved to America years prior, and he painted a picture of Liberty City as a land of wealth, success, and reinvention. A place where Niko could start fresh, away from the reach of men like Bulgarin, away from the ghosts of his past. And it was a move that his mother encouraged. As we can see within the contents of her emails, she knew that her son couldn't return to the country, whether if it was due to Bulgarin and his ties, Niko's actions in the war, or a combination of multiple things. He could not return home. And so, it was a unanimous decision between him and his mother and Roman for Niko to head to Liberty City, where Roman continued to talk of how well he was living. Luxurious mansions, fast cars, beautiful women on each arm. Here Niko was, on the other side of the globe, constantly looking over his shoulder and drowning in his sorrow while his cousin was living the high life, begging for him to come see him. Under the surface though, unbeknownst to his mother and Roman of course, Niko would see the upside of coming to the Big Apple. America wasn't just an escape, but a brand new hunting ground. In his search for Florian and Darko, he hasn't pulled up any leads whatsoever, but he has a hunch that at least Florian could be here in Liberty City. It offered him a way out, a sliver of hope that his desperate search for closure might finally lead somewhere. And so, when we first meet Niko Bellic at the beginning of Grand Theft Auto 4, he's not just a former soldier reuniting with his cousin. He's a man with ulterior motives, a fugitive running from his past, and a hunter chasing ghosts. Yet in many ways, he's also a man chasing an illusion. From the moment he steps onto American soil, reality begins to unravel the last of his delusions. He's picked up in a battered cab by his cousin Roman, who makes a feeble excuse about his sports car being in the shop. The truth, however, is far bleaker than Niko could have ever imagined. Roman's tales of wealth, luxury, and success were nothing more than fabrications. His so-called empire was a rundown, roach-infested apartment, not the lavish dream he had sold to Niko and his mother for the past 7 months or so. It's a realization that would cause Niko to yell at Roman.
So, you full of crap or what? What? Where's luxury condo? Where's sports car? Where's Barbara with big titties and Stephanie who sucks like a vacuum?
What are you talking about?
In your letters to my mother, in your letters to me, all I hear about is Mr. Big, Mr. Roman, living the American dream. Sports cars, condos, women, money, the beach, opportunity. I come here, and the only thing big about your life is the cockroaches.
Niko's outburst at Roman in that moment might on the surface seem like some simple frustration at being lied to, as though he regrets uprooting his life for an illusion, but in light of what we now know about his past, his reasons for coming to America, and the weight of the ghosts he carries, it becomes clear that his anger runs far deeper. It is a frustration of a man who has spent his life being deceived by others, by circumstances, and most tragically by himself. He wasn't just duped by Roman's lies, he was angry at himself for believing, even for a moment, that a new beginning was possible. I would even go so far as to say this destruction of his hope was so profound he'd never really recover from it. As he says in this line to Roman about how coming to a new country doesn't wash away your sins or brand you as a new person. It only compounds and makes it harder for you to keep your head above the water.
America is an opportunity for a new beginning. You're in need of one.
There's no such thing as a new beginning, Roman. With every day we live, we pick up new baggage. Baggage that we must carry with us for the rest of our lives. There's no dropping into pretending we are fresh and clean just because we get off a boat in a new place.
Of course, by the time this conversation takes place, or there's any dialogue close to this between the two of them, Niko's already gotten his hands dirty, resorting to things he had done back in Europe, albeit for different reasons. The grand elaborate tales of luxurious mansions, fast cars, and gorgeous women could have easily all been forgivable. After all, Niko knew Roman had a tendency to exaggerate. Damn near everyone that knew Roman personally knew that was a talent of his. The problem wasn't just that it was a lie, it was a part of a genuine issue that could lead to real trouble. Real trouble that out of the two of them, only Niko seemed to be able to acknowledge.
We got loansharks after us. Roman, šta se dešava? You and your debts, Roman. Uvek isto, nikad drugačije.
As if it isn't hard enough settling into a new country and getting yourself established, it's difficult for Niko to even be able to focus on just that. On one hand, Roman hasn't seen his cousin in years and wants to know what happened in the war. In the midst of his excitement that his cousin is here, he tries to find moments where he asks Niko why he's so closed off, why he won't let him in and share on the things he saw and the things he's done. On the other hand, Niko's slowly doing the same thing in a way. The roach-infested apartment and struggling cab business are initial shocks, but when Niko finds out, not too long after all of that his cousin has loan sharks after him, it's the first taste of something serious. And yet, his cousin seems to not take it so seriously. Now, from our perspective, this early in the game, Niko is a war vet and immigrant to this country. He has a protective side for his cousin, but there's also a cautious side. The caution is a mix of getting his footing. After all, he is new to the country and should be looked after by his cousin who's already established, until, of course, Niko finds his own way. However, due to Roman's inability to acknowledge the dangers of the life he's skirting on the edges of by taking money from loan sharks and then instead of paying it back, going to illegal gambling games with the hopes of winning big, the roles become reversed. Niko is thrusted into the position of looking out for his cousin, instead of the other way around. And following his service in the army, Niko became all too familiar with the types of people Roman is getting involved with. He knows the methods, he knows the ruthlessness, and he knows the type of men Roman is. The people who naively accept money and making promises that they just cannot keep, borrowing from the wrong people and betting against forces far beyond their control, which in this case for Roman is gambling. His gambling addiction would be a major problem later, and we'll see how Niko becomes more and more assertive in regard to it. But starting out, Niko appears to apply a more gentler, subtle approach, using humor as a means to get his cousin to see reason, joking of how Roman is not called the janitor because he cleans house and he always wins, but on the contrary, he's called the janitor because he can't seem to pay his debts and so he's forced to mop the floors. It all starts off lighthearted enough, Niko putting his faith in Roman, trusting that his cousin knows what he's doing. But that illusion quickly crumbles when Niko finds Roman being assaulted by the same Albanian loan sharks he thought they'd left behind the day before. Roman was fresh from an illegal gambling session, during which he had used money he owed them just to place bets, and the men would have beat the hell out of him if it wasn't for Niko helping him escape. But the consequences were immediate and were currently ongoing. Led by a man named Darden, the Albanians would corner Roman at the cab depot. They smash his computer, seize him in a headlock, and Darden brandishes a knife. It's in this moment when Niko walks in and sees his cousin in real danger that he's forced to act. He disarms Darden, breaks his arm, and sends the Albanians running. This would be the first time Niko resorts to any kind of violence since arriving in Liberty City. And even then, it's important to note that it's not about ego, dominance, survival, or even really about money, at least not from Niko and Roman's perspective, of needing more, as would be a driving force much later that wasn't heavily motivated to pay someone back. But right now it's purely about survival. It's about protecting himself and the only person he has left. But things don't end there with the Albanians. A few days later, they would catch up to Roman again, this time at a public basketball court. Only now, it's much more personal. Darden was furious not just over the broken arm that he had received from Niko, but the money that was owed to him that Roman seemed to just not be taken seriously. He would have his men beat Roman in public, and once again, Niko steps in. He'd fight off Bleeder and Kaleem, and the confrontations would end in a high-speed chase after Darden. When Niko finally corners him, Darden would pull a knife for the second time. But this time, Niko doesn't just disarm him, he kills him. Now on the surface, it looks like Niko is falling back into his own patterns. A violent man solving problems the only way he knows how, just like he did back in Europe. But if you really pay attention to what he says before and after the killing of Darden, the story takes a very different tone. You see, after rescuing Roman and chasing Darden, there's a brief moment in the car where Roman is bloodied and fed up. He vents about always being pushed around. He's been beaten twice and had his computer smashed. He was always left begging for mercy. For once, it feels good to be the one dishing it out, to not be the one running but seeing Darden as the one running. He tells Niko that now they can finally climb to the top. But Niko, ever grounded, simply replies with one simple line.
Who does he think he's fucking with? Bellic Enterprises, that's who! We're going to the top, Niko! The top!
For now, let's just try to survive, cousin.
That line speaks volumes. Niko has no grand ambitions, no illusions of power or success. Whether it's realism, trauma, or a deep desire to avoid repeating his past mistakes, it's clear he doesn't want to get swept up in another life of violence. Or maybe it's all of those things. And the conversation that comes next, I think, only reinforces that. After killing Darden and returning to the vehicle with Roman, on the drive back, Niko finally opens up, and he offers Roman a rare glimpse into his past. He tells him that Darden, to Roman, was what Ray Bulgarin was to him. A man who made his life hell. Bulgarin believed Niko owed him money, and no matter what Niko said or did, there was no escaping him. That constant pressure, that need to always look over his shoulder, is what pushed Niko to come to America in the first place. It wasn't just to find peace, but to survive.
These men, these Shylocks like Darden, they always try to squeeze you for everything. A man in Europe, another Russian. Bulgarin. He lived on the Adriatic, believed I owed him money when I did not. It made my life impossible. There was no avoiding him.
Did you deal with him like you did Darden and Bleeder?
He had too many connections for that. I had to leave. He is one of the reasons I came here.
And to see your cousin, of course.
Of course.
The conversation is the first time Niko gives Roman, and really the player, a reason for coming to the United States that goes beyond just reuniting with family. Before this, he does mention getting into trouble, but now there's a name and a little bit more to the story on how he found himself stateside. It's one of Rockstar's most subtle and effective uses of foreshadowing. In just a few lines, we understand that Niko's past is darker and more dangerous than Roman ever imagined. We see that for all the talk of fresh starts, the problems in Liberty City aren't much different from the ones Niko left behind. It's harder to pick up as it's quickly brushed over thanks to Roman's goofy response of saying Niko came to see his cousin, of course, but the substance is still there. And as bad as the Albanians were, they were just the beginning, because Niko's calm efficiency in dealing with Darden only draws more attention. And the real threat, the one that will test Niko's resolve and eventually push him to his limits, is just around the corner.
I know. And Roman, tell this fucking yokel here, if he doesn't stop staring at me, I'll have his head chopped off and put a film of it on the internet!
That threat is Vlad. Unlike Darden, Vlad's problems don't just come with knives and beatdowns. They come with power, manipulation, and the kind of consequences Niko won't be able to just walk away from so easily. Where the Albanians were content to beat the money out of Roman, Vlad took a different approach, one built entirely on control. He used Roman's debts as a leash, keeping him firmly under his thumb. He'd walk into Roman's cab depot, insult him in front of his employees, and openly flirt with McReary, who was Roman's girlfriend. He would even lay hands on her. This would make Roman clearly very uncomfortable, and when he would try to push back or give even the slightest amount of resistance, Vlad would shut him down, reminding him of the money he owed, and just like that, Roman would always fall silent. The power dynamic between Vlad and Roman is clear long before the Albanians are even mentioned, and from the very first encounter, Niko isn't having it. He's visibly cold towards Vlad, shooting him a dark stare that borders on threatening. But to Vlad, Niko's just another immigrant, fresh off the boat, a quote-unquote dumb peasant that wouldn't understand anything unless it's explained to him like a child. Vlad talks down to Niko, he mocks him, and even goes so far as to speak to him like he's property, an extension of Roman, and therefore something else he owns. But that attitude begins to shift when Vlad learns that Niko dealt with the Albanians. Suddenly, this peasant isn't so useless. While Roman is seen as a coward who can't handle his own problems, Niko proves he's capable, effective, dangerous, but still a stupid peasant. And Vlad, ever the opportunist, sees value in that. From that point on, he starts using Niko as muscle, an enforcer to collect debts and intimidate others, not out of respect, but out of convenience. Even working directly under Vlad and doing his errands, Vlad never stops talking down to Niko. He still throws insults, and of course Niko would do the same. And really, it wasn't much of a working relationship, as it was more of a fragile arrangement built on mutual avoidance and an uneasy leverage. As long as Niko stayed useful, he had just enough pull to keep Vlad at a distance from Roman, a kind of shaky insurance for his cousin's safety. But keeping Vlad away from McReary was another story. That line was much blurrier. Vlad never gave a straight answer when Niko would always bring it up. He dodged the topic entirely, waving off Niko's concerns and tossing him another job like he was handing a task to some clueless errand boy. It was clear he still saw Niko as nothing more than an extension of Roman, a tool, not a threat. But that was a mistake. With every job completed, Vlad would grow more comfortable, more arrogant, and more convinced that Niko was just like Roman, submissive, easily controlled, and firmly under his thumb. He started treating him more and more like property, and eventually, that false sense of control would push things to a breaking point. As time goes on, Vlad's arrogance only intensifies. He's emboldened by Niko's usefulness and begins to act like it's only a matter of time before he fully breaks him in. The tension simmers just beneath the surface, with the breaking point looming closer with every interaction. And that moment finally arrives when Vlad orders Niko to kill a man named Ivan. Originally, Vlad planned to manipulate the situation, to set Ivan up to look like he was robbing Roman, knowing full well how protective Niko was of his cousin. Vlad figured that would be enough to get Niko to do the job without question, but whether if it was overconfidence or just another slip in his usual arrogance, Vlad abandons the ruse and tells Niko the truth. Ivan had crossed Mikhail Faustin, Vlad's powerful and unpredictable brother-in-law. It was a simple matter of offense, but Faustin wanted him dead. Vlad still frames it as somewhat of a favor, claiming Ivan is stealing from Roman right now, hoping to push Niko's buttons. But this time, Niko doesn't bite. He almost shuts it down immediately, making it clear he has no interest in being Vlad's hitman. Up until now, Niko's acts of violence had always come from a place of necessity. Killing Darden was self-defense. The firefights he got into while working with little Jacob, who was a close friend of Roman and an arms dealer, was more about protecting deals gone sideways, not executing targets on command. This job Vlad was offering him was different entirely. Vlad wasn't asking Niko to defend anyone, he was trying to pull him deeper into a life that he seemed to be avoiding, and he still teetered on the edge of it. But as he asks what happens if he refuses, Vlad drops the real threat. If Niko refuses, Faustin will be furious, not just at him, but at Roman too, and that changes everything. Niko may hate Vlad, and he may want nothing to do with Faustin, but risking Roman's safety, that was something he couldn't afford. To make this whole exchange a little more interesting, and clear that neither one trusts the other, Vlad is taking these shady phone calls during the meeting, brushing them off with smug deflections that hint at something more, possibly having inappropriate phone calls with McReary. And the conversation between him and Niko is laced with sarcasm and thinly veiled insults, both fully aware of the mutual disdain between them. In the end, though, Niko agrees to go after Ivan, not for Vlad, not for Faustin, but solely to protect Roman. This is his limit. Niko's willing to get his hands dirty, that has been clear, but only when it comes to shielding the one person who's always had his back, the only family he really still has. To kill someone simply because a man like Vlad demands it goes against everything Niko's trying to avoid becoming. And that's what makes the player's choice with Ivan so important. Killing Ivan is completely up to the player. Whether Niko kills him or spares him, it does seem to speak volumes about where Niko stands morally. Sparing Ivan, I think, reinforces what we've already seen, and that's that Niko's violence is always deliberate, never mindless. Darden was a threat, Vlad is a parasite, but Ivan is just a man caught in a power game. Letting him go is Niko's quiet rebellion. It's a clear refusal to let himself become a tool for someone he has no respect for. And for someone as arrogant and as repulsive as Vlad, I think the defiance is all that more important. Whether if you decide to kill or spare him, the job ends with Niko calling Vlad and coldly telling him that Ivan's dead. Then he sarcastically asks if he's gonna miss his boyfriend. It's a biting remark, it's mockery wrapped in contempt, and it makes one thing clear. Niko's patience is running very thin. And by this point, it's obvious violence is no longer an exception, it's almost become routine. Roman's debts, Vlad's manipulations, and the growing chaos around Niko are making it impossible to stay clean. The fresh start he had hoped for is long gone now, and Roman's reaction to Vlad and Mallory would make it so Niko's final hope of a fresh start disappears entirely. If Vlad truly believed he had control over Niko, he was about to find out how wrong he really was. When Niko returns to the cab depot, he finds Roman alone, sitting in silence, drinking himself numb. He would eventually open up to his cousin, admitting just how much Mallory means to him, but the pain cuts deeper. He saw Vlad's car parked outside her place the other day, and he has his suspicions that Mallory's been messing around with him. Niko doesn't say much in response, just a quiet acknowledgement like it's something he's already suspected. Truth is, he had noticed the signs. I think it's quite obvious. Everybody's noticed the signs. The way Vlad looked at her, touched her, referred to her, not just in the little interactions, but the obvious phone calls between him and her going on with Niko around, it wasn't hard to suspect what was going on. But through all of that, Roman was painfully oblivious. And with this quiet acknowledgement from Niko, who, even though he had his suspicions, chose not to act, Roman felt as if it was betrayal. Now, from Niko's perspective, there's a lot of justification here. Roman had his own history of fooling around, and Niko also didn't feel like it was much of his place to begin with. Or hell, as he says, even if he did know or found something concretely, what would he tell Roman? He simply didn't know for sure in the end. And even if he had, considering Roman was fooling around himself, how could Niko even know that his cousin genuinely cared? In the moment, it didn't matter to Roman though. He was hurt, humiliated, and he'd lash out, calling Niko a user, an asshole, accusing him of disloyalty after everything he's done to help him get him on his feet from the moment he got off the boat. Whenever there's emotionally charged situations, in some regards people are right, and in other regards people are wrong. But right or wrong, whether if Roman's pain was justified or not, it was directed at Niko, and he used a word that cut deeper than Roman even knew, up until this point anyways. That was disloyal. Calling Niko disloyal was not just an insult, it was a wound. Loyalty is the cornerstone of who Niko is. It's what he values above all else. It's the very thing that was shattered the day his squad was ambushed back in the war. It was the thing that quite literally cost him everything. It's all he had left. The betrayal that killed 12 of his squad mates originated out of disloyalty, out of betrayal, and obliteration of trust. Being called that put him in the same league as the person that got 12 of his closest friends killed. And in addition to that, every violent choice he's made in Liberty City, dealing with the Albanians, all the jobs for Vlad, putting up with Vlad, who he found immensely repulsive, was all done out of a fierce sense of loyalty to Roman, his cousin. Niko may not say it often, but that commitment runs deep. Anything less than total devotion to Roman is intolerable to him. Even if Roman said it in pain without meaning, the damage was done. That moment was all Niko needed to push him over the edge, without waiting for things to get worse, or reason with Roman to try and justify why the lack of action, why he chose not to do anything, or waste any more time in general. He decided it was time to end it here and now, not just for Roman's sake, but to make things right. He would head straight to Comrade's bar, and Roman would reluctantly tag along. Comrade's bar was Vlad's usual haunt, and while it's tempting to imagine some version of this playing out with words and a warning, it was never going to happen. By the time Niko arrived, Vlad was drunk, he was smug, and like always, dismissive. Roman too was way too scared to stand his own ground. He was willing to walk away if Vlad simply promised to back off from Mallory, grasping at every straw to avoid the situation escalating any further. At what point he would even say that things happen. He's willing to even watch Vlad and Mallory go at it from time to time. But no matter what, Niko was already past that point, and seeing his cousin shrink in Vlad's presence, or just the thought of confronting Vlad, only poured fuel on the fire. Niko had already made his decision, and as luck would have it, by the time they arrive at Comrade's bar and face Vlad, the confrontation explodes beyond anyone's hope of controlling it. Vlad would attempt to leave and place his bodyguards behind to deal with Niko. Niko would immediately take down both bodyguards and then chase Vlad through the city in another chaotic vehicle pursuit. And when he finally corners him, there's no hesitation. The words exchanged between Vlad and Niko is already what Niko knew was coming. Before he even pulled the trigger, Niko knows none of this can be undone, none of this can be avoided. He's seen men like Vlad before, petty, prideful, vindictive. As he tells Roman if he lets Vlad live, this cycle will continue. There'll be more threats, more humiliation, and next time, one of, if not both of their lives. The way they're chasing Vlad down in a vehicle, he won't forget it. He'll be back. It doesn't matter if Vlad has powerful friends. Niko's done playing it safe. He's done letting men like Vlad hurt the people he cares about most. So much so, he's willing to take chances with these quote-unquote dangerous people that Vlad is connected to. With no more warnings, no more leverage, and with one shot to the head, Vlad is dead. Niko's final words to Vlad encompasses everything well. Vlad may call Niko dumb for essentially killing himself and his cousin for some Puerto Rican woman, but Vlad is a stupid one for fucking with Niko's family. As Niko drags Vlad's lifeless body towards the water in an attempt to dump it, struggling under the man's bulk, Roman loses it. He's in full panic mode, pacing, shouting, unable to process what just happened. He knows exactly who Vlad was, Faustin's brother-in-law, and killing him doesn't just mean trouble, it means death, or at least that's how Roman sees it. To him, this isn't just a bad move, it's signing both their death warrants. While Roman spirals, Niko on the other hand remains composed. He stops dragging Vlad's body, catches his breath, and sits in quiet intensity. Through a moment of silence, he finally opens up. For the first time, he lets Roman in on his past. He speaks about the ambush, the betrayal that wiped out his unit during the war, and the years he spent chasing the truth. He's convinced the man responsible is somewhere here in Liberty City. It's that search, not just Roman's promises, that truly convinced him to come to America. Understandably, Roman's overwhelmed, and he brushes it off with a sarcastic remark about how Niko gets emotional after a kill, and if that's how he always does this kind of work. But beneath the panic and tension, this is one of the only real moments Niko has had to talk about what's really been eating at him. Yes, he's talked about Ray Bulgarin before, but I think he was just drawing parallels between Darden and Bulgarin, adding an additional perspective that your problems don't just vanish because you kill or deal with the person that's pushing you. Sometimes they're like a weed, where their roots and connections run far deeper than we ever get a chance to really see. Here, on the other hand, is true vulnerability. And as far as why he chose this moment to enlighten Roman, I think it's because since arriving in Liberty City, everything has been about Roman's mess. The lies about the success, the crushing debt, the loansharks, the Albanians, then Vlad. Niko's been constantly reacting, working, fighting, surviving, all to just protect his cousin. He hasn't had a second to breathe, let alone unpack the decade of pain he's been carrying. Now with Vlad dead, not yet dumped, but done for, there's finally a sliver of space. The immediate threats are gone. Yes, Faustin is out there and more trouble is likely coming, but for once, no one is actively knocking on their door. And in that rare, still moment, as Niko drags a body to the edge of the murky river, staring down the consequences, the way he speaks, it's not just about venting, it's about grounding Roman in the truth. It's clear he doesn't hold the same delusions or ridiculous hopes for what is going to be set out before him and his cousin. He's much more realistic. He may have always wanted that American dream, that fresh start, but when you're just chasing closure and that's been your life for a decade, who really knows what kind of fresh start you can genuinely have? Whether if he finds that or not, it's the need to know that's the quiet engine behind every step he's taken since he's arrived. It's been what's pushing him. It's just a bit of cruel irony, though, that really, Vlad's death, in a way, served to protect their future, but it only ends up dragging Niko deeper into his past. In trying to shield the one person who still mattered to him, he sets in motion a chain of events that will pull everything he's running from straight into the life he's been trying to rebuild. What was supposed to be a turning point becomes a collision course. And from this moment on, the divide between who Niko was and who he's trying to become won't just blur, it'll break and shatter. In the past, it's finally caught up.
Hello, Mr. Bulgarin. I didn't rob you. We were busted a mile off the coast. I had to swim for my life. I don't know what happened. I nearly drowned. I did my best! I didn't fuck up!
Just as both Roman feared and Vlad smugly warned, killing Vlad does exactly what they expected. It lands Niko and Roman squarely on Mikhail Faustin's radar. What began as a few suspicious men tailing Roman a few days after the killing of Vlad escalates quickly. One of them would catch the cousins off guard, knocking Niko unconscious and dragging Roman out of a hiding spot at gunpoint. When Niko comes to sometime later, he finds himself tied to a chair in a dimly lit basement. Roman, bound and gagged, across from him and terrified. The contrast between them in that moment is striking. It's not the first time we've seen how differently they respond to pressure. Vlad gave us more than enough examples, but this scene drives the point home for the depth of Niko. Roman is loud, frantic, desperate. Niko, by contrast, is eerily calm. Whether it's a deep-rooted sense of control or a quiet indifference toward whether he lives or dies, he handles a situation with a disturbing ease. He even cracks jokes.
You've been a bad boy, Mr. Balkan. And the boss is not happy.
Oh no, I shit my pants.
Not yet, but you will. Who are you working for?
My cousin, Roman. Don't be an idiot.
That's not good enough. I'm gonna saw off your fucking arm. Speak!
Okay. You're dead like sit up the ass. What do you want me to say, huh?
And then when Faustin enters the room, already angry, pissed off at the screaming that Roman was doing, the noises Niko was making, and the fact that his henchmen decided it was a bright idea to bring both men to his personal home. He was upset, shouting, and waving a gun, and yet he speaks plainly to Faustin and doesn't flinch when facing a man as unpredictable and dangerous as Faustin immediately appears to be. Even when Faustin justifies his own brutality, asking Niko if he thinks it's okay to kill his employees, Niko responds without fear or hesitation, without reverence. He simply says if they're assholes, yes. Almost like he's seen worse or simply doesn't care anymore. The whole sequence is a perfect reflection of who Niko really is beneath the surface, or at least how easy it is for him to shut off that switch. He's not just a man hardened by trauma, but someone who's so used to chaos he doesn't even blink when it stares him in the face, and he's quite possibly facing his final moments. We could easily spend hours unraveling the mess that is Faustin, Niko, the Russian mob, and everything that spirals from it, but it's much more impactful to focus on how Niko gradually slips back into the familiar rhythm of violence, the kind he left behind in Europe. His time working with Faustin and his right-hand man, Dimitri Rascalov, marks a shift in Niko's approach. He doesn't flinch at the work. In fact, he adapts to it almost a little too easily. It's not that Niko has lost all sense of morality. Far from it, but he recognizes the reality of the situation. He and Roman are indebted after Vlad's death, and with Roman getting shot by Faustin during their tense first encounter, Niko understands they're in no position to refuse. His cousin was injured and left in their care, and if doing what Faustin asks keeps them alive, then so be it. And Niko's efficiency on the first job, his willingness to follow orders without asking too many questions, makes him a valuable asset. He doesn't push back, doesn't posture, he just gets it done. And had the internal fractures between Faustin and Dimitri not existed, or Niko had cared a little more, he might have become a permanent part of their operation. But the truth is, Niko doesn't care about their organization or their goals. He doesn't care who's in charge, who's arguing, or what's at stake politically. To him, these are just jobs. He needs the money, and that's all that it is. Still, there's a quiet understanding in how Niko sees Faustin. I think we can see that through conversations with Dimitri, and more importantly, with Faustin's wife. Niko begins to grasp that, through them, Mikhail Faustin wasn't always the unstable, paranoid figure we now see. He was a different man. He once had balance, fairness, and maybe even honor. But something over the past few years, whether trauma, power, paranoia, or the cocaine he was snorting, all eroded what remained of the man he used to be. One of the most revealing moments comes when Niko speaks with Faustin's wife. After she confesses she never imagined her life would turn out like this. Trapped in fear and watching her husband deteriorate before her. It wasn't that long ago that Niko saw her cowering in fear and getting yelled at by her husband. And so he opens up in a rare show of vulnerability. And I do mean rare, extremely rare. Apart from Roman, she's the only person he allows himself to be emotionally honest with. He speaks about the war, about the horrors he witnessed and the things he did, about how people can become soulless, numb to everything. It's not said with drama or self-pity, it's quiet, it's reflective. You can feel that Niko sees something of himself to a point in Faustin, a man warped by violence, consumed by it, shaped into something unrecognizable over time, and it's a parallel that isn't forced, it's lived. Niko doesn't excuse Faustin's behavior, but he does understand how a man can get there. even sharing with Dimitri that he hopes things don't get to him as the way they got to Faustin. Of course, it's not a direct comparison like that, and the context is more so Dimitri discussing how Faustin wasn't always like this. He was a calm man, but things got to him, and so Niko shares that he hopes it doesn't get to him either. Regardless, while Faustin's a clear live wire, Dimitri plays the opposite role, trying to steer Faustin back toward reason, or at least keep his outbursts from bringing more heat down on their organization. Dimitri prefers to play it smart, make deals, avoid unnecessary bloodshed, and cut into a rival's profit rather than their throat. But Faustin's impulsive violence makes that nearly impossible. Where Dimitri sees strategy, Faustin sees insult. The smallest sign of disrespect or disobedience earns a death sentence. And since Niko isn't invested in any of these power struggles, just as he wasn't interested in Vlad's ego games, he just observes them, keeping his distance and occasionally unleashing a smug remark to Faustin's goons. But you can tell, based off his face and how he reads the situations, there's a part of him that can't help but feel the weight of the dysfunction. The way it mirrors things he's already lived through, the way it all seems destined to just collapse. He doesn't care enough to stop it, but he understands enough to see exactly where it's heading. And that quiet awareness is what makes this stretch to the story feel so personal. Not because Niko wants to be a part of it, but because in so many ways, he already is. And it only gets worse. As Faustin's jobs spiral into deeper and more senseless violence with every step, what begins as small-time work, like stealing televisions, quickly escalates. Before long, Niko's muscling in on an underground porn operation, strong-arming them into cutting Faustin a share of the profits. Now, even that was restrained only because Dimitri stepped in. Faustin had originally wanted Niko to kill them all outright. Then comes the point of no return. Faustin orders Niko to kill a man he labels a traitor, Lenny Petrovich. In truth, Faustin's paranoia is the result of mounting pressure from law enforcement. A storm entirely of his own making, but rather than face the consequences of his carelessness, he casts blame elsewhere, accusing Lenny of being a rat. The problem is, Lenny wasn't a snitch. He was just the wrong target. And still worse, he was the son of Kenny Petrovich, head of Liberty City's most powerful Russian crime families, a family that, up until then, had maintained an uneasy peace with Faustin. Lenny's death at the hands of Niko, under Faustin's orders, obliterates that. It's not just a hit, it's an outright declaration of war. But Faustin doesn't stop there. Almost to prove how little he fears the consequences, he sends Niko to plant a truck rigged with explosives inside a Petrovich-owned garage. The act is both reckless and symbolic. It's a message written in fire. And the betrayal runs even deeper when Niko realizes he wasn't even told the truth about that job. He was ordered to just pick up a truck and deliver it. But as he climbs into the vehicle, calling Faustin, letting him know that he's there, inside the truck, Faustin explains he's driving a truck full of explosives, after the fact. That deception sparks a moment of friction between Niko and Faustin, but then the damage is done. The line is already crossed. The garage is blown up and whoever's inside is killed. What's fascinating here is not just Faustin's descent into chaos, but Niko's silence in the face of it. He doesn't challenge Faustin's motives, he doesn't protest the deteriorating state of the organization, and he certainly doesn't try to ease Dimitri's growing panic as the situation spins further out of control. It's not that Niko's indifferent, he sees it all. The impulsive violence, the paranoia, the self-destruction, but he stays removed, operating in a detached, almost clinical manner. He doesn't get drawn into the drama or the politics, but because he's not there to be a part of it, he's there to survive. And by this time, it's not even as Roman is that much of a concern, he's been far removed from the situation. Not that it even matters. By the time Niko finishes his work for Faustin, especially against someone as powerful as Kenny Petrovich, his fate is already sealed. Faustin's recklessness, his refusal to listen to reason, and Niko's own involvement in escalating the conflict has pushed things past the point of no return. It's what leads Dimitri Rascalov to quietly pull Niko aside for a private meeting. There's no shouting, no threats, just cold clarity. Dimitri, ever the pragmatist, has managed to arrange a tentative peace between the Faustin's faction and the Petrovich family. But the peace comes with a price. Kenny Petrovich wants Faustin dead. That's the condition of avoiding all-out war. Deliver Faustin and Dimitri and all their associates would be spared. Refuse, and the only path available to everyone is war. Niko assumes that Kenny also wants him dead, considering he was the one that pulled the trigger, killing his son, but Dimitri lays it out plainly. If Niko wants to live, the condition is he has to be the one to pull the trigger. As far as Kenny Petrovich is concerned, Niko is just a hired gun. He has no affiliation or no understanding of Faustin's organization or what he was even doing apart from following Mikhail's orders. Niko would sit back quietly for a moment, taking it all in when he questions why Dimitri, who has no family, no visible attachments whatsoever, couldn't just walk away. Niko sees Faustin as a lost cause, but Dimitri, he still has a way out. Despite Mikhail being his longest and closest friend, it's gotta be worse deciding to betray that friend and signing off on his death than just to leave. But Dimitri refuses to take any other alternative. He's chosen a side, and he's following through it, saying this to explain himself.
There's no way out?
Not now. Not after you killed Petrovic's son.
You don't have any family. You could run.
Wherever you go, people will find you if they want to badly enough.
His words do carry an uneasy truth. After all, Niko found himself in an entirely different country because a man did everything he could to get to Niko. And considering what happens not too long after this, it's yet another moment of foreshadowing. Now, I've always found it interesting that Niko still never puts up much of a fight. Granted, it makes sense for him to kill Faustin in order to save his own skin, and as we play the rest of the mission, Niko tells Faustin plainly that he brought this on himself. So it's a mixture of doing what's best for himself, as well as seeing that this is just cruel justice that Faustin ultimately had coming, whether if it was via Niko or somebody else. But even then, it's just odd in a way for him to agree to side with someone such as Dimitri, who is in essence betraying his closest friend. Even if Niko was grateful that Dimitri managed to broker some type of escape out of all this by being the one to kill Faustin, the fact that Niko seems caught off guard by Dimitri's betrayal to him feels weirdly naive and almost out of character for him. Or maybe it just goes to show how deeply he felt for Dimitri. Maybe he really did see some parallels between himself and Roman's situation versus Dimitri and Faustin, where Faustin was consumed by rage and constantly killing, and Dimitri just couldn't get a hold of him, begging and pleading for him to stop and see reason, and seeing a little bit of Niko and Roman's relationship in that. How Niko at one point might have been consumed by rage. Perhaps there's a little bit of guilt in the killing of Vlad, and Roman begging and pleading for him to see reason and not just resort to violence. Unfortunately, there's never any concrete evidence that really explains why Niko has so much trust in Dimitri, but the reason why I say he has so much trust in Dimitri that seems almost uncharacteristic of him is the arrangement in payment. Now granted, Niko's never really had a reason to distrust Dimitri or have his guard up, but it's a little odd, all things considered, that in the lieu of killing the head of a Russian crime family, to have his second-in-command call and arrange a payment at a warehouse and instruct him to come alone, when it's clear that Dimitri had his own connections with Kenny Petrovich. We don't really know the circumstances surrounding that, but when you have clear various connections and you're ordered to come somewhere alone to receive some type of payment after potentially killing the only person that could have helped, or at least put up some type of resistance, he doesn't seem to bat any type of eye. He doesn't think twice, he doesn't make any phone calls. Granted, at the time, he had no real connections within the city to really call upon, but there's no worry. It's not until a few seconds later that little Jacob, of all people, calls him, worried about the trouble that he's been getting into with the Russians. Little Jacob is all too aware of the Russian mafia and the way they do things, and it's out of the concern that he shares for Niko and his distrust of the Russians that Niko even has any backup to begin with. Little Jacob is quite an overlooked character in this whole story. He's there for a lot of comic relief, I think, because of the clear fact that Niko really doesn't understand a single word he says when he first meets him.
It's Niko.
Niko! Yeah, me bleach hard last night, you know. Me soon come here, just hold on.
What?
What up, Niko?
Hey.
Glad to see the man, you know. Want to my man, Roman.
Roman? He's okay. He's still waiting for his big break, eh?
Big break? Sure. I promise I'll comfort to a fool, you know, Niko. A boy for creep before him can walk, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, right there at the end, it's written all over his face. He just agrees with it. In game dialogue, he's unsure of what to say or how to respond because it's clear he just doesn't know for sure what the hell little Jacob is saying. But by the end of the game, he comes through in most of the important moments. He makes random calls checking in on Niko when Roman's gambling debts are netting him in more trouble. Jacob and Mallory are the only two to call Niko, warning him of his cousin's problems. And at the end of the game, regardless of your ending, Jacob is always by Niko's side to repay revenge, looking out for him and lending him a hand. It's a bond that is formed in the early jobs Niko does for him, and I'd say it's solidified when he backs him up at the warehouse to face Dimitri, which was in fact a setup far worse than Niko could have ever predicted. As it turns out, Niko's luck has pretty much ended. Ray Bulgarin, the man that pushed him to escape Europe, was here in Liberty City and apparently is a close friend to Dimitri. The meeting to pay Niko off for killing Mikhail Faustin was nothing more than to confirm his identity and hand him over to Ray Bulgarin to pay off Niko's alleged debts with his death. Luckily, Niko would respond quick enough to keep a guard from slicing his throat, while little Jacob slides into the warehouse to provide support against the waves of armed men the pair had brought with them. In the end, Niko, little Jacob, Dimitri, and Bulgarin would all escape with their lives, but nothing from here is really the same. Dimitri and Bulgarin would spend the rest of the game pursuing Niko and using his cousin as an easier target to draw Niko out, but that'll come in time. Following Niko and little Jacob escaping with their lives, he would call Roman to inform him of the failed deal and the threat of Ray Bulgarin being here. In his phone call to Roman, it's clear he's in a panic, drowning in the mistakes of his former life, and well aware of not only how well connected Ray Bulgarin was back in Europe and could very well be the same here in Liberty City, but all too familiar with his methods and the repulsive, unspeakable things he's all too willing to do. And Niko's fears of what might happen are somewhat confirmed when he hears Roman pick up the phone whispering, calling back to the days following Vlad's death and Roman being tailed. He'd ask his cousin to meet him in an alleyway and to come quick. When Niko arrives, he finds his cousin locked in a trunk of his cab. He did that to himself in an attempt to be safe. According to him, people have been constantly calling the apartment and hanging up, so it spooked him, and Niko wasn't answering his phone, so it made him fear the worst. And Niko would tell him their situation is far worse than either one of them could have ever imagined. Out of the entirety of Grand Theft Auto 4, this is one of the rare moments where Niko is completely apologetic. He apologizes for everything. He's fucked up. The deal with Dimitri fell through and he sold him up the river to a well-connected human trafficker that wants him dead.
That guy I owed money to, Bulgarin.
Yes, the guy in Europe who lives by the Adriatic.
Yeah, he's here now.
Great.
I'm sorry. I've ruined your life.
He really does seem defeated. He tells Roman he's ruined his life, and the look on his face when he does so almost calls back to everything he ever had to do in order to escape Bulgarin before. In later Rockstar games, primarily Red Dead Redemption 2, a lot of weight and significance is put in the looks of characters and the silence that they give. Now, that's attributed to, of course, technology and just how far graphical fidelity has went, but the evolution of Rockstar's writing as well. And that element isn't lost here on Niko. In a lot of ways, Niko himself, his personality, his mission, his outlook to change his life, and whether if he is worthy or not worthy of redemption, is very reminiscent of Arthur Morgan. And what I absolutely love about both of them is they're both distinctly their own person without any deliberate connections made. In other words, when you play Red Dead Redemption 2, Niko doesn't immediately come to mind, and going back and playing Grand Theft Auto 4, there's no immediate, oh, this is just like Niko's story, or this is how he responded. It's the exact same. There's nothing like that that taints the character development and the fact that these two feel like very different people, essentially. But it's hard to not pick up on those nuances after studying many characters in Red Dead Redemption 2, as long as I have. Regardless, bringing Roman up to speed on the fact that Bulgarin was here in Liberty City, there was no need to go any further. He already enlightened Roman on how he made his life hell, and he never wanted that for his cousin. But Roman, ever the optimist, pulls him out of this despair. It's very characteristic of Roman, again, that insane optimism. Sometimes it's goofy, other times it's annoying, clearly to Niko, but in this moment it serves a greater purpose. It actually switches the roles. He snaps Niko back from that dark place he was quickly descending back to, and he tells him, they can find another way. Niko would give a flash of anger, swearing to kill every Russian, but Roman says that's exactly what he won't do, almost as if he forbade it. They don't have time for revenge, and Niko, of all people, can't afford that. They can lay low and start over. Roman just wants to go back to the apartment and collect their things and pick something special up. The driving force behind the story is, of course, Roman and Niko heading back to their apartment to gather their things, but on the way there, the conversation the cousins have is touching and holds its own significance. After calling Mallory to see if she can get her cousin to let Niko and Roman crash at her old apartment for some time, he would hang up positive with some good news, shedding some light at the end of the tunnel. He would talk of how things really might not be that bad, and how he was thinking about getting out of the cab business, and that reminded him of a dream he had a night before. He and Niko had a place of their own, a restaurant where people can sit and relax. It was classy, a place of distinction. In his dream, Niko met the right woman. Roman would describe her as beautiful, pure like his Mallory, who he was married to in that dream. Everything was perfect. Niko may not see himself settling down now, but in time he will. And Roman would say that this could be the start of that, the fresh beginning. Of course, Niko's immediately focused on just distancing himself from Dimitri and Bulgarin, but Roman does have a point. Eventually, there will come a time where this does all end. Regardless of Roman's own vices and seeming to fall off from that vision from time to time, it's something he does hold on to that is, when both cousins aren't looking forward to it, then at least Roman can serve as Niko's anchor and push him in that direction. It's something he does genuinely want for them, as he's so adamant Niko finds the right girl that he even goes out of his way to call Katie McReary, whom he never met, to tell her how much his cousin likes her and that she's absolutely 100% invited to his wedding and that she needs to be there, which does of course happen at the end of the game. But before that dream can come true, reality sets in. When they arrive, they discover Roman's apartment is in flames, and his cab depot is as well. Bulgarin, Dimitri, and the Russians have effectively taken everything from the cousins, and as such, Roman is torn up. It prompts him to break down crying, attacking his cousin for ruining his life, and he's done him no good, getting beaten, having his computer smashed, which really wasn't Niko's doing, and getting shot in the stomach since Niko arrived. Unlike Niko, who had everything handed to him as soon as he got off the boat, it took a ridiculous amount of time to scrape together enough cash to buy a cab, then another, the cab depot, sleep under his desk for over a year, and then buy the shitty apartment that Niko attacked the moment he walked in. And on top of all of that, that fire that just consumed that shitty apartment claimed the wedding ring he wanted to show Niko. That was really why he wanted to go back to the apartment. He claims he bought a wedding ring that was worthy of Mallory, but it didn't matter anymore because it burned down with everything else he had. And that was all thanks to his cousin. It's yet another moment of just lashing out. There's no concrete hate here, just grief. The two of them would head over to another part of Liberty City, taking up a temporary residence in Mallory's cousin's old apartment in South Bohan. With no money, nowhere else to go, Niko and Roman are back to square one. Possibly worse off, as Niko's past is very much real, and a bigger danger than it may have ever been since coming to the city.
I got money.
In which case you've got help.
So, tough guy, you know about this business?
I know about protection. What do you need? I need money. This pays. I can do it. I don't care if I live or die.
The relocation to South Bohan is a moment in the game that feels a little weird. Not that it's out of place or bad timing, bad pacing, I would never say any of that. It's more so the timeline or events varies very much on player decision. Not just in accepting jobs and Niko's varying perspective on those contacts, his deepening relationship or refusal to get to know them anymore, with it being strictly a job, but this portion is very much dictated by Niko's motivation for money. And it's not until you accept a particular phone call that it changes the direction of the story and as such impacts Niko personally. That phone call can be taken pretty late, and by then a number of events have taken place. Niko's met with various contacts, his opinion with various people who all are intertwined in one way or another, all become small factors. So to properly benefit this video, it wouldn't make sense to go from event to event and cover every single contact in minute detail as I usually do. Instead, it makes more sense to cover the beginning, give a general summary, and what exactly separates Niko now versus before, and discuss the phone call and events that changes him afterwards. So, reestablishing themselves in South Bohan is priority number one, and it was thanks to Mallory that the reason Niko and Roman are even able to get off their feet as quickly as they do is because this is where she grew up. She had a lot of childhood connections. Through Mallory, not only did they manage to get their new apartment, but Mallory would introduce Niko to two contacts of hers. Their introduction marks a clear shift in the trajectory of Niko's story. Not a descent, but a change in purpose. Up to this point, Niko's been navigating Liberty City with a fractured sense of direction. He arrived looking for closure, hoping to finally leave behind the wreckage of his past, while building something stable alongside his cousin. But that hope began to erode. Protecting Roman forced him into his old habits: violence, intimidation, survival over principle. Now with Manny Escuela and Elizabeth Torres, we see Niko's priorities fully pivot. He's no longer chasing peace or even survival with intent. He's just working. Any job, any task, any risk, as long as it pays. The two contacts themselves are interesting, as their introduction not only highlights that shift in Niko's motivations, but even touching on the level of flexibility Niko has to secure what he's after, primarily cash. Manny represents everything Niko despises in the city. Once a gang member himself, Manny now brands himself as a vigilante, claiming to clean up the streets he helped corrupt. But it's all for show. His real goal is fame, not justice. He uses Niko's work as content to prop up a false narrative about redemption and community service. And from the moment he meets Manny, Niko doesn't hide his disdain. He can barely stand to be in the same room as Manny, let alone feed into his ego while being used to kill the very people Manny once called friends, all while a camera rolls to build up his personal brand, which Niko absolutely hates being a part of. Through Manny, Niko is also introduced to Officer Francis McReary, roped into the illusion of community reform. But even Francis isn't what he appears to be. Like everyone else in the city, he's in it for himself. And Niko becomes a tool in yet another scheme of Francis's later down the line. In hindsight, it's actually quite fitting Francis meets Niko through Manny, as both he and Manny have a similar mask of intending to do right and lawful publicly, but behind the scenes is nothing more than hypocritical men, employing the same means they publicly condemn to privately secure their own interests. Then there's Elizabeth Torres, who operates in stark contrast. She's a drug dealer. No pretense, no apologies. She's powerful, respected, feared, and real. Through her, Niko gets tangled up in a web of crime that includes names like Johnny Klebitz of the Lost MC, Playboy X, who dominates the crack trade in northern Algonquin, and Patrick McReary, Francis's brother and a relic of Liberty City's once powerful Irish mob. Between the two, it's glaringly obvious that Niko can stand, or at least tolerate, Elizabeth over Manny. He respects her honesty, even if her world is just as dangerous. Manny, on the other hand, is nothing more than a clown, a liar, a performer, a coward, hiding behind a mask of morality. Yet despite these personal feelings towards Manny and the other dangers getting involved with Elizabeth, he pushes all of that aside for the single purpose of getting out of the situation he's in now. As long as people are paying, Niko's willing to oblige. They really just are jobs. And there's two key moments during this part of the story that emphasizes that. The first one is on the drive with Playboy X to meet with Johnny to oversee a heroin deal. It's the first time Niko and Playboy have ever met, and so Niko asks if Elizabeth gets Playboy to do jobs like this often for her. I'm gonna play X's response in its entirety and how Niko asserts himself as part of what Playboy's been cooking up.
Does Elizabeth get you to do stuff like this often?
Elizabeth don't get me to do shit. I just like to keep an eye on things. There ain't a deal in this town I don't know about. I own this city, for reals.
Yeah? Well, how come we haven't met before?
You obviously ain't been big time. I started small like you, player. Slinging rocks on the corner, sticking cats up, all type of shit. Them was the old days. Now it's all about diversification.
A heroin deal is your way of diversifying?
Money talks. Money say jump, cats say how high. This is a cash deal. I got other shit going down as well.
What type of shit you got going on? I'm always looking for work. If it pays, that is.
I pay like a Slongberg Sachs bonus, bitch. It's Christmas every day when you rolling with this nigga.
So you got work?
Not yet. I gotta set shit up. But I'll need a cat like you real soon. Give me your number.
There are no other moments, especially when meeting someone for the first time, where we see Niko throughout the entire game just include himself like he just did with X. Now, he doesn't get pushy or disrespectful, but it does highlight him leaving his comfort zone and saying, hey, I'm available. The other moment is less offering his services for cash and more in line with just how capable he is of becoming indifferent and simply doing what's asked of him. To set the stage, it's during Niko's final visit to Elizabeth. Her paranoia has taken hold of her. She tells him that she can feel the law closing in, that her bodyguard Jorge has turned informant, and that everyone around her is a rat. She's spiraling under the pressure and she's high off cocaine. And that's when Manny Escuela attempts to film her for his documentary about cleaning up Bohan. In the midst of this small chaos, Manny would turn to Niko and ask, what's he doing there? And it's in that moment of him not paying attention that Elizabeth takes the opportunity to shoot him and his cameraman in the back of the head. Then she orders Niko to dispose of the bodies before telling him one last time to keep his distance. Her empire's crumbling and the LCPD's closing in fast. It's just a matter of time and she doesn't want him around. Now I get the irony of splitting hairs and talking about morality, especially in a game like Grand Theft Auto where you're killing and robbing people left and right. But the missions always stuck out to me because even though Niko didn't particularly like Manny, he wasn't necessarily a threat or that much of a problem. He could be very well annoying but harmless enough. And he did pay Niko to do a couple jobs for him, even if Niko didn't care all that much for the jobs or the hypocrisy tied to it. But he grabs his body, throws him in the back of the car, and instead of just dumping the car as it is, Niko takes their bodies to a doctor to harvest their organs on the black market. There are moments when Niko cracks jokes, not out of joy in killing, but more as a grim reflection of the irony in the situation, like with Manny, who always talked about making a difference in the streets, only to end up as a corpse being quietly removed from them, and maybe even helping them by having his organs repurposed. It's dark humor, not celebration. A way for Niko to process the chaos around him without completely unraveling. And given Niko's background before arriving in Liberty City, it's not hard to see all of this as a kind of echo. Back in Europe, he likely took on similar jobs. Security work, enforcement, hired muscle, trafficking people. All that stuff required emotional distance and detachment. There's an unspoken familiarity in the violence, a sort of muscle memory in how he handles it all. But as he continues, Niko's more human side does start to show. There are small cracks in his armor that remind him and us that he's not the same man he was overseas. He may be doing the same kind of work, but the way he carries it and what he's willing to feel has changed. These moments of vulnerability don't come from Roman, nor do they resemble the guarded empathy Niko briefly shared with Faustin's wife. Instead, they're drawn out by three key figures in Liberty City, people who in their own way allow Niko to drop the mask. These connections don't come from blood or obligation, but from a deeper, quieter recognition. They touch something personal in Niko, reminding him there's still something inside worth holding on to, even if he doesn't quite know what to do with it. The first of which, I think one of the most prominent, comes from Dwayne Forge. Dwayne is introduced to Niko through Playboy X, who once saw him as a mentor, a man who helped build his name on the streets back when the rules were simpler and the drug trade was everything. Dwayne was a respected figure in Liberty City's underworld until he was arrested for selling crack and sent away for a long prison stretch. When he was finally released, it's not celebration that meets him, it's tension. Playboy isn't angry that Dwayne's out. In fact, before Dwayne's release, Playboy privately shared with Niko a little bit of fear. While there's happiness and excitement that Dwayne will one day be free, the fear derives from Dwayne not understanding, after such a long prison sentence, that not everything is so dependent on the drug trade. The streets aren't the same, the hustle is different. Playboy's ambitions have grown beyond corner deals and crackpots. He wants more now, bigger moves, cleaner money, maybe even legitimacy. But Dwayne, after so much time, may not be able to see that. And, to a degree, Playboy's fear turns out to be true. He's coming back into a city that feels alien, clinging to the past, trying to make sense of a world that no longer fits the one he knew. And Niko sees himself in that. Both Dwayne and Niko are men out of place, haunted, hardened, and quietly drowning in their own isolation. Dwayne's loneliness is heavier though. His return isn't marked by reunions or second chances, it's marked by silence. The people he used to trust have either moved on or betrayed him. His old life is gone, and what remains is a void he's not sure he wants to fill. That despair runs deep. Dwayne is open about the darkness he feels. He talks openly about wanting to end it all, about the crushing weight of being forgotten. And it's in those moments Niko doesn't turn away. He doesn't try to fix him or offer hollow promises. He just listens, encourages, and even tells him that he reminds him of himself. I think much of what Dwayne tells Niko in a lot of these cutscenes grants much insight into the loneliness and the despair Niko suffered from. He could very well still be suffering from it to a degree, but I think it most likely hit him the hardest following the ambush where all his friends got killed. And in the mission Undressed to Kill, we see him very positive, extremely encouraging. Dwayne is more sad than ever. He mentions how he can't cope anymore. In contrast, prison was easy, but this is too much. He used to run uptown. Bohan used to be his, and now he just doesn't have the energy for anything anymore. He's been stabbed in the back far too many times. And Niko would tap him on the shoulder and tell him, hey, let's go get it back. Even if he doesn't want to do it, Niko will do it for him. He tells him to stop being so miserable. What did he really lose? In some ways, not only does it seem like through Dwayne, we see a part of Niko that genuinely suffered and could be helping Dwayne the same way he wished someone helped him out. But in another light, it feels very similar to how Niko was trying to bring up Roman's spirit after Roman saw his apartment and his cab depot up in flames. It's genuine care that Niko is actually displaying here. Yes, Dwayne does end up paying him, but I think it's more so the personal connection he has to Dwayne and the money just being a matter of principle. Apart from Dwayne, the next person that highlights qualities in Niko that aren't really seen all that much throughout the story is Marnie Allen. Marnie is a stranger that you run into in Liberty City. She's not part of the main story, but her story and ties to Niko speak on Niko's more vulnerable and caring side. Marnie's a drug addict that Niko can find at a park who asks if he has any drugs on him. When he says no, she eventually offers to sleep with him for just $5. The offer repulses him. He'd ask if she had any home or anywhere else to be that didn't involve offering to sleep with people for money in the park. She'd get angry and defensive, but Niko genuinely feels bad for her. It's been a while since she's got her fix and it's starting to mess with her. So he offers to take her somewhere to get her fix. The drive there, he slowly erodes her defenses, genuinely expressing concern for her and how she shouldn't be letting heroin control her life. It does trigger a small back and forth between the two, but as Niko continues to somewhat reason and rationalize with her, Marnie would finally respond that she knew Niko would help her, that there's something in his eyes that betrays he has a good heart. He would chuckle and say he doesn't know all about that, but she says it's true. Most people would have taken advantage of her and not helped her when the drug withdrawal was as bad as it is. Now granted, to Niko's defense, the bar really isn't set all that high, but the caring tone Niko has during the conversations with her and giving her $500 telling her to take care, kid, I think says enough. And the second time we run into her, there's even more care from Niko. He not only takes her to the train station so she can go back home to her family in the Midwest, avoiding potentially being killed as she screwed someone over, but he continues to show sympathy for her plight of just falling into a bad addiction. On the way to the train station, he learns just how she ended up like this. According to her, she ran into the producer who got her to do adult-themed videos, and that same guy introduced her to heroin. And just like that, she was hooked. Just another young teenage girl swept up in the idea and dreams of making it big in Liberty City, only to end up as a heroin-addicted prostitute. Niko's response to her story is simple. He just says motherfucker, but his tone is dismissive and almost angry. When they get to the terminal, he tells Marnie to look after herself and gives her another $500. When you consider everything Niko's been pulled into, the killings, the robberies, the betrayals, and even the darker implications like disposing of Manny's body, his ability to remain emotionally distant almost becomes a survival mechanism. He operates like someone who has accepted that his soul is already too scarred to be saved. He does what needs to be done and rarely lets himself feel anything about it. And that's exactly why his brief interaction with Marnie carries so much weight. It's a fleeting encounter in the grand scheme of things. No shootouts, no money, no grand consequences, but it's one of the few moments where Niko chooses compassion without obligation. And it's just so damn unfortunate that Niko's second interaction with Marnie is only a maximum of 2 minutes long. Marnie's lost, strung out, drifting through the city like a ghost. She has nothing to offer Niko, and yet he listens. He doesn't judge. I mean, of course, he does throw her own logic at her, I think, to get her to rationalize and see reason through her own decisions, but he still helps her. Not because it benefits him, but because somewhere deep down, he still remembers what it means to care. In a life filled with violence and cold transactions, that quiet, human gesture stands out. It's a reminder that Niko's heart isn't gone. It's just buried. And even if he doesn't fully believe he can be redeemed, moments like this suggest that something inside him still at least wants to try. And while Niko doesn't fully commit to leaving his old life behind until much later, not until he finally tracks down the two men who have haunted him for years, the idea of living differently begins to take shape during this chapter of his life. During this period of the game, that possibility comes in the form of Kate McReary. Kate is unique in Liberty City's cast of hardened, jaded characters. While her brothers Packy, Derek, Gerald, and Francis are steeped in crime, corruption, and all the baggage that comes with it, Kate stands apart. She's not involved in their criminal dealings, nor is she romanticizing the McReary family's once feared reputation. In fact, as Packy himself puts it, Kate is almost paralyzed by how dark the world around her has become. But it's not fear, it's disapproval. approval. She sees the damage, the cycles of pain and violence her family continues to perpetuate, and she wants no part of it. From the moment she meets Niko, there's a quiet interest between the two of them that's almost immediately obvious, but she keeps him at arm's length, not because she's unaware of who he is, but precisely because she knows what he is. She's lived her whole life surrounded by men just like Niko, and she refuses to fall into that same pattern. Kate is clear. She can't be romantically involved with someone who walks the same path as her brothers. She's drawn to Niko, but she won't open the door until he knows he's capable of being more than what Liberty City and her brothers demand of him. And you can take Kate on dates, like many other women in the game, but these moments with her are different. The dates aren't about distractions or cheap romance or trying to get lucky. They're about understanding her views on family, on loss, on choosing a different path when the world offers you nothing but broken ones. Niko is someone she can be herself around. She doesn't have to lie about who her family is, and she doesn't have to pretend to be okay with it. But what she can't do is allow herself to fall for a man who's still trapped in that same life. For Kate, redemption isn't just a hope, it's a boundary. And for Niko, her presence becomes something that grounds him. She sees goodness in him, but not in the way that others do. She doesn't praise him for his loyalty or toughness, but she sees potential in what he could be if he just let go of revenge and stopped defining himself by the past. She wants to believe there's more to him than just blood and survival. There's also a quiet, unspoken pain lingering around her. In subtle ways, she alludes that her brothers suffered deeply under their father, possibly being molested, something that Packy confirms that he and Gerald did suffer at one point. Kate didn't experience that horror, but she still carries weight. But instead of numbing herself with violence, she's chosen distance, reflection, and quiet strength. She's not running from her past, she's refusing to repeat it. And if Niko's ever going to have a shot at something more, it won't be through another job, another paycheck, or another act of vengeance. It will be through earning the right to stand beside someone like her. As the story progresses and Niko becomes more deeply entangled with the McReary family, his bond with Kate grows into something far more meaningful than just attraction. She begins to serve as a kind of moral compass. One of the only people in his life willing, and as far as he sees it, really able to tell him the truth he needs to hear. Apart from Roman, she's the only one Niko calls at the end of the game to get a second opinion from in regards to possibly working with Dimitri again. He tells her there could be a lot of money possibly improving his and Roman's life, but he'll be going back on an oath he swore to himself. She'd assure him that money wouldn't change their lives, and no amount of money in the world is worth compromising the person that you are. And if he accepts that deal, she would never look at him the same, but most importantly, he would never look at himself the same. The fact that Niko even considers calling Kate for her opinion in such a pivotal moment says everything about the role she would come to play in his life. It's not just about seeking advice, it's about trusting someone with a part of him that's still undecided, still searching. And at that point, her influence doesn't just signal a growing emotional connection, it reflects his evolving mindset, his willingness to pause and reflect rather than react out of anger or pride. It speaks volumes about his internal struggle with revenge and just how far he's come. But before Niko can even get to that point, we need to talk about the phone call he receives that alters the path of the story, or more so shakes him up, reminding him exactly what his main drive and genuine purpose here was all along, which always was finding the person responsible for the betrayal of his squad back in Europe over a decade ago. Now, this phone call would come courtesy of Mallory, 2 of them, and one even coming from Jacob, all alluding to some serious danger Roman might be in. At first, it's just a call from Mallory, concerned that Roman didn't come home the night before. Niko would initially brush it off, thinking Roman's probably just caught up in one of his usual late-night distractions. He got too drunk or was out late with Brucey, just recuperating from the night before. It wouldn't be the first time that Roman was staying out late and just crashed wherever. But then little Jacob reaches out a few days later, hinting at something deeper. He brings up Roman's gambling habits and how owing the wrong people in Liberty City can go south fast. It plants a seed of worry, but again, Niko tries to stay focused not only on work, but the fact that there is no concrete evidence that Roman is in serious trouble. It's more so little Jacob has been hearing things and just wants to make sure everything is alright. But a few days later, Mallory would call again. This time she sounds shaken. She tells Niko she's certain Roman's been kidnapped. She's heard rumors that he owed money to the Russians, and a friend of hers spotted him being dragged out of a club. Word on the street is, after they dragged him out of the club, they've taken him to a warehouse deep in the industrial section of Bohan. Still, Roman has never said anything, not to Niko, or not to McReary, or made any mention whatsoever of Russians or in any debts to anybody, let alone them. As he hangs up the phone with McReary and promises to go to the industrial section to at least check the warehouse out, the danger turns out to be all too real. Dimitri would send a message. It's a photo of Roman, beaten, bruised, and held at gunpoint, taunting Niko that his cousin has gotten into a little bit of a fix, and signing the text off with his friend Dimitri. There's no more doubts. Niko drops everything. What follows is pure fury. Niko isn't just concerned, he's livid. Everything he's done, everything he's endured has been to protect Roman, and now because of Dimitri's betrayal and the Russians closing in, his cousin's being used as a pawn to get to him. There's no negotiation, no hesitation, no more distractions. Niko heads straight for the warehouse with one goal in mind, to get Roman out or die trying. That's exactly what he does. Even though the place is crawling with armed guards, dozens of Russian mobsters all heavily equipped, it doesn't matter. Niko tears through them with precision and rage, fighting his way deeper into the building, closer to the heart of the operation where Roman is being held. In the chaos of gunfire and blood, one of the Russians grabs Roman and uses him as a human shield, hoping to stall Niko's advance, but Niko doesn't hesitate nor freeze. He just takes a deep breath, lines up the shot, and with one perfectly placed bullet, drops the man without touching Roman. The quick embrace the two have after Roman being saved, followed by their drive back to their current apartment in Bohan, puts a lot in perspective for both of them. For starters, Roman's gambling addiction and ignorance attached to it is brought up yet again. Niko would ask how in the world he's in debt considering Niko hands him money, damn near all the money he's risking his life for. Roman's response reveals that despite everything that just happened and all the bad he's suffered in regards to being in debt and dealing with loan sharks, such as being kidnapped, beaten, nearly killed, he still talks about bad luck and bad cards, still holding on to the belief that you have to lose a little bit of money in order to win big. That there's a cycle to these things. He claims he's on the downswing of that cycle, that the man who owned the spot he was gambling at knew Dimitri and was trying to get him to give up Niko. They want Niko dead, and in light of everything that just happened, Bohan is no longer safe for them. They need to leave. It's a moment that leads them straight to the heart of everything they've been avoiding. Once they reach their apartment, the tension that's been simmering finally breaks. Niko's patience with Roman's gambling fantasies, his constant belief in get-rich-quick schemes, has completely run out. He's angry, not just because Roman keeps making reckless decisions, but because those decisions are being made while dangerous people are hunting them down. People who have already burned Roman's house and business to the ground, forcing them both to start over with nothing. For the first time, this would get Roman to finally admit that he doesn't understand the country as well as he likes to pretend that he does. The system, the rules, the danger, it's all too much. He agrees he's tired of pretending he has control, and he tells Niko the best thing they can both do now is just disappear, keep a low profile, cut their losses before it's too late, and go. He promises to stop gambling, to stop putting himself in harm's way, but he also makes it clear if they're going to survive, Niko has to let go of his obsession with revenge. Roman sees Niko for what he's become: cold, focused, relentless, determined. He's always pushing forward, always chasing something. And now that chase has brought both of them to the edge. If the Bellics are going to make it out of this alive, revenge can't be on the table anymore. Niko has to let go what just happened. Yes, Dimitri took Roman, kidnapped him, and used him as a way to try to get at Niko, but they don't have the time, the firepower, or the freedom to go to war with people like Dimitri and the Russians. Roman begs him to just let it go. Niko would agree. He promises to leave the Russians alone, but he asks for something in return. Just a little bit of time. Not for retaliation. The Russians he completely forgoes. What he's after is closure. He pleads with Roman to let him find Florian and Darko, the two survivors from the day his squad was ambushed. The two people who may finally answer the question that's haunted him for years. Why? He knows they're barely holding things together, that this will put them in even more danger, and he's fully aware they may not have much time left at all, but he can't move forward. He can't build a life with or without Roman until he knows the truth. This isn't about vengeance anymore. It's really about peace. He's not asking to fight, he's asking to be free. There's a desperation in his voice that Roman acknowledges and grants him. And as we'll see, the closure will come, but like everything in Niko's life, freedom doesn't come without a cost.
Okay, but I want Florian and Darko. I need to know what happened. Give me that. I have not been the same man since the day that Darko betrayed us.
Niko, be calm! Be calm!
Fuck! Calm! Florian! Florian! I've come for you, Florian!
Once Niko recenters himself on the original reason he came to Liberty City, which was to find Florian and Darko, he then throws himself deeper into the city's underworld. The jobs become more frequent, the stakes higher, and the connections far more complicated than ever before. But even then, his vision and his purpose has never been truer. As we continue to discuss Liberty City's underworld, filled with unstable alliances and shifting loyalties, and how Niko walks that fine line, I think it's important to at least talk about the conclusion between Dwayne and Playboy. I've discussed earlier how Dwayne is one of the emotional tethers to Niko in the game. He basically sees a reflection of himself in Dwayne. And at one point in the story, there comes a choice of killing Dwayne or Playboy. Now, who dies is completely up to player choice. You can kill Dwayne for 25 grand, which is how the initial job even comes up. Playboy invites Niko over to his house one day and brings up a very uncomfortable conversation for Niko, claiming that Dwayne is allegedly plotting a takeover, and Playboy can see that every time Dwayne looks at him that there's murder in his eyes. It's just a matter of time until Dwayne comes and takes everything he feels is owed to him. Playboy points out that Dwayne is his mentor and that he doesn't have the stomach to be the one to kill him. They were friends back in the day, and so it would only make sense for Niko, who barely knows the man, to be the one to put the bullet in the back of his head. And 25 grand is a massive amount of money, especially for Niko at this point in time. But he can't deny the connection he feels. A shared emptiness, that quiet recognition. And, to be frank, even though there's no concrete evidence Dwayne isn't plotting anything, I mean, the man himself can barely seem to muster up the energy to leave his apartment, or even find the will to continue to live. Organizing a hostile takeover seems incredibly far-fetched. It could be Playboy's alleged fear is either more rooted in guilt or a sense of obligation that he just doesn't want to have anymore. There's really no canonical choice, but it's hard to take that 25 grand outright. Yeah, you might be putting a man out of his misery, but when the conversation to kill said man is one of, if not the only conversation throughout the entire game where Niko audibly says that he doesn't like it and it's making him feel uncomfortable.
Well, you can't kill him.
Nope. But you can.
But I don't want to.
Well, neither do I, man. But if he goes insane, we all dead anyway. I mean, Dwayne is a killer.
I don't like this conversation.
Do you think that I do? But it's kill or be killed out there. You got a lunatic after you? Man, you dumb. Now I will give you a lot of money. Because see me? Now I ain't scared of no one. But a motherfucker says he's gonna kill me, the motherfucker's gonna die.
Man, I'm not sure. I got to think about it.
It's hard to go against that and still take that 25k and drop Dwayne. All things considered, it's not a light choice with any easy answer. Siding with Dwayne may be the moral move, but even then there's no feeling of happiness, of relief that the right call was made. That's largely in part due to Dwayne's response in finding out Playboy was killed by Niko. The man has the deed to Playboy's penthouse, but instead of finding joy in his newfound fortune, moving out of the roach-infested projects that he's currently living in, he rejects the upgrade. He gives it to Niko as a sort of thanks, I guess. He respects Niko for having his back, but won't take the penthouse due to it reminding him too much of Playboy and all the good times they both once had together, before they were forced to come to ask the same man to betray their former brother and kill him. It's just a sad situation that at the very least rebuilds Niko's conscience, sparing Dwayne and giving him hope that there are still people that have his back. With that chapter closed, Niko then finds himself taking more work from the McReary family from both sides of the law, with his introductions into the family being through Francis and Packy. Francis's jobs are all around perfecting his image in exchange for neither looking for Niko, who he knows was responsible for Mikhail Faustin's death, and the Russians wanting him. He would initially offer Niko a deal. Knowing all this information about him, he promises to not keep an eye out for Niko if he catches his drift, and in exchange for this sort of protection, he wants Niko to take care of a blackmailer of his. First, it seemed as if it was just one guy with a couple tapes. But then he hires Niko to land a job interview at a prestigious law firm in order to get a private one-on-one with the main lawyer, a man by the name of Tom Goldberg. He's the target. He orders Niko to land this job interview, and once inside, to not only kill Tom, but take any files he has within his office that might be related to Francis. The final two jobs Francis gives Niko perfectly captures the hypocrisy and desperation of a man clinging to power behind a badge. In one, Francis pays Niko just $5,000 to kill a drug dealer. Not because justice is being served, but because going through legal channels would take way too long. And so, because he wants immediate results, he pays Niko $5,000 under the table to go and kill this drug dealer. In the second job, Francis is furious because Niko did exactly what he was asked to do, to kill one man. But Francis expected Niko to wipe out the dealer's entire crew, and when that doesn't happen, he threatens and blackmails him again, forcing him to go back and clean up this loose end. The interaction between the two, I think, is quite obvious that they both essentially have each other checkmated. Yes, Niko's been the killer behind all of Francis's jobs, but at the end of the day, Francis is trying to become commissioner. How's that going to look when he tries to take Niko in for killing people when Niko can just turn around and say Francis paid him? The relationship between the two of them is shaky from the start, and it just never improves. Niko sees right through him. He's a cop who preaches law and morality while actively abusing his power to cover his own corruption. His brothers, on the other hand, Derek, Packy, and Jerry, are honest about what they are. Criminals with blood on their hands. Francis hides behind respectability and judgment, even if he uses Niko to tie up personal threats to his career. He condemns his brother for the lives they lead, yet he's no different, and Niko finds that intolerable of him, taking the moral high ground while trying to be police commissioner, and paying a hitman like Niko to take care of everything for him, illegally. And so it's quite ironic that it's actually Packy who introduces Niko to the rest of the McReary family, while showcasing more honor and respectability in the things he says and the things he does. That's despite him and his brothers clearly being a group of deeply flawed, often self-destructive individuals, but ones who are at least honest in their pain and their loyalties. Through Packy, Niko meets not only Kate and their ailing mother, but the other two brothers, Derek and Jerry. Niko's entry into the McReary family's world begins the way many of his relationships do, as a hired gun, brought in by Packy after proving himself reliable, skilled, and discreet. At first, he joins Packy to steal some illegal medicines being smuggled into the city by the Triads, followed by a high-risk warehouse raid targeting the Angelotis, one of Liberty City's most powerful mafia families. Each job goes off smoothly, and with every success, Niko earns more than just money. He earns a deeper place in the crew, and begins to learn not only more about the family's operations, the family's history, but their inner dynamics as he continues to meet each member of the family. The turning point of all of this would come before and after the Bank of Liberty heist. It was a massive operation that requires absolute trust, at the start of which it's quite clear Jerry does not trust Niko whatsoever, even threatening him to not screw over his family. In the wake of the job, it not only showed that Niko is capable of how he works under pressure, keeps his mouth shut, and can carry the weight of something that big, but how important he is to the family. The job itself didn't go over as smoothly as everyone hoped. One of their associates, a longtime friend of the McReary's named Michael, was gunned down, while Packy and Derek were arguing with each other. Niko doesn't jump in or straighten them out, but either of them end up dead, in jail, or in bigger trouble because Niko turned on them. Whatever the exact reason might be, the bank heist was the point Jerry turned out to start trusting Niko with his own jobs, while Packy would reach out on a personal note to see if Niko could keep an eye on Derek, who's been spiraling out of control, falling deeper into drug and alcohol abuse, and spending most of his time in the park. While Niko's time with the McRearys don't exactly give him help in his search for Florian or Darko, it's still important as it does help establish his closeness to them, and his respect for honest criminals as opposed to Francis, who they all see pretends to be something he's not. While the McRearys grow more so in sentimentality, the person who does help Niko makes some genuine progress in finding one of the two people he's after. It's Ray Pacino. Ray's a capo of the Pecorino crime family. He helped Packy get the information on the drugs he and Niko stole from the Triads, and as such is introduced to Niko through Packy. Niko would begin doing jobs for Ray on the understanding of Ray not only paying but helping Niko find who he's after. Niko's work would start off as a hit job, but then it progressed into dealing with a very complicated deal. The deal was surrounding diamonds. It's a moment that marks one of the most significant points of intersection between GTA 4's main story and its two DLCs, a shared thread that pulls together the chaos of multiple lives all orbiting around the same object, which was the diamonds. Originally stolen by Johnny Klebitz and the Lost MC from Anthony Gay Tony Prince, the diamonds are stashed in 2 trash bags waiting to be collected by Ray Bocchino's crew. Niko is part of the crew sent to retrieve them. What follows is a spiral of betrayal and missteps, which in turn sours Niko's view of Ray. Following his diamond retrieval, Niko is then forced to take the diamonds back from the very people he picked them up with after they tried to cross Ray, leading to a messy reclaim mission that only complicates things further because Niko actually kills the entire crew, something that upsets Ray as he tells Niko he never specifically told him to kill them, to just retrieve the diamonds. Once the diamonds are reclaimed by Niko, he's brought in to oversee a deal where he and Johnny are meant to sell them off to a buyer for $2 million. Johnny is meant to take half of the cash for his trouble in stealing the diamonds, while Niko is supposed to take the other half back to Ray. The problem is, before Niko even agrees to help with the job, him and Ray get into a heated argument. Niko's frustration with the work Ray's been giving him and the shitty pay attached to it has hit its limit. Niko's come to find Ray as a slimy, disorganized employer, who not only pays insultingly low, continues to make the mistake that Niko works exclusively for him, as if he owns him, not too different to how Vlad used to treat Niko, save for the outright disrespect. But Ray has also made no progress with finding the man he promised Niko to help track down.
Oh, whoa, whoa! Are you fucking kidding me? No! I keep doing these favors for you, and you pay shit! I need this from you. A guarantee that you will find this man. I know he's in the city. So either you give me your word or go fuck yourself! I'm sick of this shit!
Fine! Fine, you got it. You want my word? You got my word.
Good!
Who is he?
Florian Kravich.
All of the frustration and broken promises finally pushes Niko to the edge. He's ready to walk away from Ray entirely. He's exhausted from being used, underpaid, and lied to, and still no closer to finding the man who tore apart his past. But sensing that he's about to lose someone valuable, Ray backs down. He relents. He gives Niko his word. He'll help him find who he's looking for. He just needs time to reach out through his connections, and in return, he asks Niko to handle one last job. But first, he does need a name. Niko tells him the name of Florian Kravich. Ray would joke about the name, but he promises to help him track him down, as long as Niko agrees to see this job through. But like most of Ray's operations, this one spirals out of control. The diamond deal at the Libertonian falls apart when a third party catches wind of the exchange and opens fire on Niko, Johnny, and the buyers, turning the museum into a war zone. For those that have played the DLCs or is paying close attention, this third party is Gay Tony's bodyguard, Luis Lopez. From his perspective, he was actually just taking the diamonds back that was originally stolen from him. In the chaos, Niko manages to escape with his life, but not the diamonds. They vanish, and Niko has no clue who took them. When he reports back to Ray, all he can tell him is that Johnny took the cash and never returned. That betrayal not only costs Ray the diamonds and his money, but it sparks a fallout with the Lost MC. Furious and needing to make a statement, Ray would then send Niko on one final job to track down and kill a group of lost bikers as a warning. Niko follows through, carrying out the hit as instructed. And for his trouble, he finally gets something in return. His reward handed over a day or two later. Whether it's closure, progress, or just more blood on his hands is debatable. But for Niko, it's a necessary step forward and another debt collected in the name of finding the truth. Through a phone call, Ray would give Niko what he's been waiting for. The lead he was promised. He admits that Niko's been a solid earner, dependable and useful, and now he's ready to throw him the bone he's been chasing. There's a man named Talbot Daniels, who owes Ray a chunk of money, and Ray believes Talbot might know something about Florian Kravich. He tells him where he can find Talbot and that he should be the one to point Niko in the right direction. As soon as the call between Niko and Ray ends, Niko then contacts Roman, and his voice is flat, emotionless. He doesn't explain much, he just asks if Roman can do him a favor. If he can meet him outside their new apartment in Algonquin, where they've been staying since Bohan became too dangerous. Roman agrees, and when Niko picks him up, he doesn't waste time. He tells him about Talbot and that he's going to lead them straight to Florian. Roman immediately recognizes the name. He knows Talbot from some of the card games he's played around the city. Then comes the heavy pause, and Roman, clearly unsettled, says out loud,
"So, you're finally going to kill Florian Kravich?"
The weight of the moment lingers. Silence hangs between both of them. Roman eventually breaks it once more, not with encouragement, but with full-blown concern. He reminds Niko that if things go wrong, he's the one who will pay the price. Whenever Niko goes too far, it's always Roman who ends up caught in the fallout. If Florian turns out to be the wrong man and Niko pulls the trigger, his people will come looking for someone, and Roman's always the easier target. He half jokes that he didn't have so many scars until Niko came to Liberty City, and now he feels like a human chopping board. They really don't know how dangerous or how well connected Florian might be since he came to Liberty City. And there's truth in what Roman says. Some of it might be exaggerated, but the danger is real. Niko's capable, hardened, and largely unbothered by risk. His own safety's never been a priority. But Roman's a soft target, the one who always gets found, always gets hurt. And for all of Niko's coldness, he does care for Roman. While he takes into account the fear Roman shares, he also catches the sarcasm, the exhaustion behind his words. Roman would share he's just worried for his cousin, that he has to learn to let hate go after all. And will killing Florian make him feel any better? Niko doesn't have an answer, besides soon they'll find out. The cousins eventually spot Talbot Daniels, who's selling caricatures on the street, trying to blend into the rhythm of everyday life of the city. At first, Talbot denies knowing anyone named Florian, but Roman, who's played cards with the guy enough times to read his tells, knows he's lying. He nudges Niko, suggesting that Talbot doesn't handle pressure well, and maybe beating him a little might jog his memory. It works. Talbot almost immediately breaks, admitting that he does know a Florian who lives uptown. Niko tells him to then get in the car and start giving directions, as he's going to be personally leading them straight to Florian's doorstep. Talbot complies, leading them through the city, gradually weaving toward the man Niko spent over a decade searching for. As they close in, parking outside Florian's apartment, Talbot casually mentions that Florian goes by another name now, Bernie. He then would ask Niko what he plans to do once he gets inside, if he plans to kill Florian. Niko's response highlights the rage that's been quietly building in him as he got closer and closer to Florian's. Long past the point of reason, he restrains his rage for a second to coldly tell Talbot that when he's done with Florian, he'll be begging to die. That's all Florian has to look forward to. Then he quietly dismisses Talbot, sharing he's done his job. What follows next is one of the most emotionally charged moments in all of Niko's story. For the next minute or so, we see him storming into Florian's apartment, angrily waving a gun while Roman desperately tries to calm him down. I mean, the weight of this moment is everything. Over the 10 years, he's finally found one of the men, and he doesn't even try to pinpoint if Florian was really the traitor or not. The anger takes over, the grief is nothing but rage, and all he has now in front of him is a vengeance. He's shouting in his native tongue, telling Florian he's come here for him. He kicks his door down, a vast difference from when he's finally closing in on Darko, which we'll discuss a little later. But right now it's all anger, rage, and grief boiling over into vengeance with no reason beyond that. It's not until Niko sees Florian, is genuinely shocked with what he sees and how he's living his life now, followed by Florian beating Niko to the punch, exclaiming he thought either he or Darko was the traitor, realizing Niko thought it was actually him, prompting him to cuss him out and shockingly call Roman fat.
What are you guys doing here? Why did you kick my door down? I've come to ask you some questions.
It wasn't you, was it?
What wasn't me?
Who set us up? It was you or Darko! I thought it must be him! Oh my god! You think it was me! That's why you are here! You've come to kill me! Well, screw you, Niko Bellic and Fatty Roman! It wasn't me, wasn't! I wouldn't do that!
Can we stop with the fat jokes, Florian?
The entire scene is one of those moments where Rockstar perfectly blends comedy and tragedy, layering an emotionally loaded scene with just enough absurdity to make it hit harder. After all the buildup, years of hunting, obsession, and imagining the moment of reckoning, learning that Florian wasn't the traitor shatters something deep inside Niko. The fury that had fueled him fizzles into something quieter, heavier. There's no catharsis, no justice, just emptiness. Rage would be set aside for a quiet acceptance, a determination to find Darko. For Niko, Florian being innocent doesn't bring relief. It brings grief, disappointment, and the sinking realization that his pain hasn't found a place to land yet. He leaves the apartment without looking back. Once outside, Roman does his best to make sense of everything and even tries to comfort his cousin, but Niko doesn't have the strength for conversation. His voice is low and he's completely detached. He just says he needs to be alone for a while, and that says a lot. The man who stormed into that apartment seething with rage just moments earlier walks away quiet, shaken, and deeply sad. Not because he didn't get to pull the trigger, but because the truth he found didn't bring peace, just more waiting and perhaps more disappointment. It's hard to not think for a second that Niko genuinely believed Florian was the traitor, because of how he is before and after confronting Florian, as opposed to Darko. Granted, circumstances are different, since Darko there is no way it could have been anyone else other than him. I mean, the man even outright admits to it, but the stark contrast between Niko's intensity before confronting Florian and the emptiness that follows says a lot. The way he storms into the building, seething, consumed, almost vibrating with years of rage, only to leave hollow and quiet, reveals something deeper. It could mean he truly believed Florian was the traitor, as it would have been easier to accept it had been him. Florian sounds as if he was always the odd one out, the least likely to fight back and the easiest to blame. That kind of thinking would offer a twisted sense of closure, even if it wasn't based on truth. It speaks to the way Niko spent years turning his grief into suspicion, trying to make sense of a betrayal he never fully understood to begin with. Or maybe it wasn't about Florian at all. Maybe it was just that everything had built up for so long, the time, the losses, the silence, it just all boiled over, and in that moment, Niko just lost himself to vengeance. There was no logic, no weighing of facts, just a need to make someone pay. When it turned out Florian wasn't the traitor, that fury collapsed into a quiet kind of devastation. Whatever the reason, the difference between Niko in that hallway and the man we later see confronting Darko is unmistakable. By the time he finds the last man from that day, he's changed. The years, the bodies, the truths, the people he's met and helped along the way in Liberty City, and even Roman doing his best to get Niko to abstain from vengeance, to let go of the hate, to accept things and move on. They've worn that jagged edge down. Now, while it doesn't necessarily progress the story or Niko's determination to find Darko, I do want to point out Florian and Niko's relationship. After discovering that Florian Kravich is now living as Bernie Crane, there's a slow, uneasy reconnection between him and Niko. There's a bittersweet tension to all of it, awkward but not entirely cold, as both men try to navigate what remains of a friendship left behind in another life. It starts off with Bernie beginning to reach out, and while Niko responds, it's clear it takes him time to adjust not just to the name change, but to the entire way Bernie lives now. Which, as he explains, the whole point of coming to America was to live somewhere much more progressive, so that way he can come out of the closet and be his true self. There's a little shock factor and some discomfort by Niko, but I do want to point out he never turns away. His care for Bernie becomes more evident through action and his words. Yes, when Niko re-enters Florian's life and meets the man now known as Bernie Crane, it's clear he has some trouble adjusting to all of it. The name change, the flamboyant mannerisms, the dramatic energy, it's all a far cry from the quiet, reserved Florian Niko once knew. And there's visible discomfort at first, even some frustration at Bernie's newfound tendency to just be over the top. But what matters is that none of that gets in the way. Niko never uses it as an excuse to walk away. Whatever his personal hangups might be, he still shows up for Florian when it counts. And that care becomes evident, not through grand gestures, but through action. Niko defends Bernie from violent homophobic attackers in the park. And when Bernie's secret relationship with Bryce Dawkins, who is the city's mayor, becomes knowledge to some blackmailers, Niko steps in at Bernie's request. It'll later be revealed the blackmailers were none other than Dimitri and the Russians, further complicating Niko's problems with them from before, but it's the intent that matters, not just the assailants. And Niko's intent is clear through this conversation.
It would kill Bryce if he didn't have his career. Maybe he should have thought about that when he started dating you. Not that there's anything wrong with dating you. Your choice is your choice, man. But he should have thought about who he was before getting elected on the family values ticket. He preaches homosexuality as evil. It's insanity. He's a hypocrite, and it was only a matter of time before someone like Dimitri tried to capitalize. Shit. I'll shut up now. You don't need me telling you about your life. I don't normally talk this much. I'm your friend. I will try to help.
At first glance, it might look like Niko's just lashing out at another hypocrite, a politician who publicly condemns homosexuality, calling it immoral and evil, while privately sharing a relationship with Bernie. And yes, Niko does hate people like that. I think that's quite obvious through our time with Francis and Manny. But this isn't just about contempt for hypocrisy. It runs deeper. Niko's frustration in this situation comes from real concern. He gets caught up in the conversation, talking more than he usually would, offering warnings, voicing anger, not because he cares about Bryce or the political fallout, but because he genuinely doesn't want Bernie to get hurt. The chaos, the blackmail, the risk, Niko sees it all and it rattles him more than he expected, and it makes it that much more powerful when he catches himself realizing how far he's gone into someone else's personal life, how much talking he's doing, as he says. Despite the years, despite everything that's changed between he and Florian, and despite how much Florian has changed as a person and his lifestyle, Florian is still his friend. And Niko, for all his coldness and distance, it shows that the wall around him isn't as impenetrable as it seems. There's still a part of him capable of caring deeply, capable of protecting not just for duty, but for love, loyalty, and friendship. And Florian does hold a very unique friendship with him. Apart from Roman, he's the only one that's known Niko prior to coming to the States. Florian also was there that witnessed the same tragedy Niko suffered from, the same trauma that Niko walks around carrying. And that's a bond that the two of them will always have, united through grief and betrayal. As Niko continues his search for Darko, he'd get more tied up with the Pecorino crime family, meeting Phil Bell, another capo of Pegorinos, and eventually Jimmy Pecorino himself. In the other part of Liberty City, Niko continues to get closer to the McRearys, eventually having to make the decision between killing Derek or Francis on account of Derek threatening to speak to a journalist on his family, and more importantly, on his brother who's trying to become police commissioner. That's something Francis absolutely can't stand for, as he needs a blemish-free reputation. This prompts the player to decide whether if they're going to kill Francis or Derek. The decision is left entirely up to the player, but considering everything we know about Niko and his views on corruption, hypocrisy, and loyalty, it's hard not to spare Derek. Yes, Derek is a spiraling addict, barely keeping himself together, but he's also not the one who hired Niko to kill his own brother. He's not pretending to be something he isn't. Derek is openly broken, weighed down by regret, addiction, and years of pain. Unlike Francis, he doesn't wear that mask. He's not hiding behind a badge, not dressing up his selfishness as righteousness. Francis, on the other hand, is everything Niko despises. A self-serving hypocrite, using his position in law enforcement to protect his own interests, manipulate others, and clean up his dirty past. His threats, his pressure, his willingness to use Niko like a tool, which he initially threatens Niko with prison if he doesn't kill Derek, it just all adds up. Canonically, and for Niko personally, it feels far more fitting to pull the trigger on Francis. Francis's death sends a clear message, and not just to Niko. His siblings, including Packy and Kate, all acknowledged it was bound to happen. None of them mourn him. Only their mother shows any real grief. To everyone else, Francis's death wasn't a tragedy, it was a long time coming. In contrast, Niko's decision to spare Derek deepens his ties to the McReary family. His relationship with Packy grows more meaningful, and his bond with Kate becomes even more personal in the aftermath. She directly thanks Niko for even coming to the funeral, something a lot of people would have not done just for the fact that Francis was a cop, let alone the hypocrite that he was. And you can see the difference in the way the game presents each outcome. If the player chooses to kill Derek, Niko distances himself from Francis at Derek's funeral. But if Francis is the one who dies, Niko sits beside Derek at the service, quietly honoring the man he chose to spare. It's a subtle detail, but it says everything. Niko may be a killer, but he's not without a code, and when forced to choose between a man who's honest about his brokenness and a man who cloaks his corruption in virtue, it would make sense for Niko to side with the truth, even when truth is a hard thing to face sometimes. While Niko's getting deeper into mob work and twisted dynamics of familial betrayal with the McRearys and the Italian mafia, another force begins to pull his strings from the shadows. This time, it's the government.
So, Mr. Bellic, quite a file. Quite a story.
Who are you? FIB?
FIB? Do I look homosexual? Do you think I care about the size of your Johnson? Now, you can't always tell who the good guys are. I'm not a good guy, but I'm fighting with them. And guess what? So are you.
Hooray.
What begins as a mysterious contact from the United Liberty paper quickly escalates into something far more unsettling. A man, never named but clearly tied to the IAA, begins coercing Niko into doing off-the-book operations under the veil of national security. The jobs themselves appear to be about stopping terrorist threats, but the further Niko is pulled in, the less clear it becomes what or who he's really working for. And yet he has no choice but to comply. From the beginning, there's a biting, condescending edge to their relationship. The contact clearly enjoys the power move. He lobs sharp, mocking jokes at Niko, often with a smirk that suggests he's read far more of Niko's file than he's letting on. In fact, he makes that clear, threatening to hand Niko's history over to the FIB if he refuses to cooperate. And he brings up Niko's time in the army, his war record, and even taunts him in his own native language.
What's your name?
Not relevant. Call me. Very soon. Go. And hey, welcome to America. Pascal Stala Dejava.
Bushka.
It's all very personal. He knows a lot of, if not everything, about Niko, and every interaction feels like a reminder that Niko's past will never stay buried. That no matter how far he's come or what he's survived or how much he's evolved since coming to America, someone's always watching and willing to exploit him. By their second meeting, the stakes become more clear. The contact casually reveals that he knows Niko's hunting someone, and that he fully expects Niko plans to kill whoever it is once they're found. He doesn't offer help, not directly. Instead, he dances around the idea, playing a cold game of maybe or maybe not, dangling the promise of assistance like a carrot on a stick. But what really matters isn't the promise, it's the leverage. Niko gets no say. He does what he's told, or he's handed off to the federal government. As the contact tells Niko, people like him and Michelle, who is used against Niko, are perfect for this type of work. They're people who don't have a lot to lose, but don't necessarily have a reason to live. And so, reluctantly, he becomes the government's weapon, just as he's been used by everyone else since the day he stepped off the boat. The irony is sharp, though. A man who came to America for freedom now finds himself trapped once again, with someone else pulling the strings and another enemy lurking just behind the curtain. Through the morally gray missions assigned by the United Liberty paper, Niko not only finds himself tangled deeper in the shadowy operations of national security, but he's also introduced to one of the last major power players in Liberty City, John Crivelli. Crivelli's a name that still commands respect. As a longtime boss of the Gambetti crime family, he led them to become the most powerful Italian-American faction in the city. Even now, frail and bedridden in a hospital, his influence stretches far and wide. He may be on the edge of death, but his power hasn't faded, at least not entirely. His connections still run deep, especially with people in government, including the United Liberty paper contact who refers to him as a mutual friend when he introduces Niko to him via a cell phone call. Upon meeting Crivelli, he wastes no time putting Niko to work. The first job involves providing protection for a high-profile politician who's been marked for death by Dimitri Rascalov's organization. The reason being, Crivelli shares, is because Dimitri's blackmailing Bryce Dawkins to put up some contracts to be sold. Windows, bus lines, cleaning, all contracts the Crivelli family controls and has controlled for over 50 years. He's trying to undermine his power and stomp out the Gambettis once and for all. The politician Niko's escorting is meant to give a speech on the threat of Russian organized crime. If Niko helps work with Crivelli, Crivelli offers Niko the inch-thick file the police have on him and the man Niko is searching for. All he has to do right now is make sure that man gets to City Hall. Crivelli's suspicions of the Russians doing everything in their power to make sure the politician doesn't make his way to City Hall turns out to be true when the convoy is hit in a violent ambush on a back street, but thanks to Niko's experience and resolve, the politician survives the attempt. Impressed, Crivelli sends Niko on another task, to eliminate Kim Young-guk, a counterfeiter running operations on Gambetti territory without permission. And finally, in what would become his last assignment, Crivelli, alongside the ULP contact, has Niko destroy multiple Ancelotti-run drug vans, a hit to both the Ancelottis and Dimitri, who are now tightly allied. These missions subtly reveal just how much the power dynamic in Liberty City is shifting. The Russians under Dimitri have become a serious threat, not just to Niko, but to the old guards. Dimitri and the Russians continue to do their best to muscle in on Crivelli's old territory and his old connections while trying to scare the politicians and blackmail them to support their organization as opposed to Crivelli's. Crivelli himself represents the dying empire, clinging to what's left, while Dimitri and the Ancelottis are carving out the future with blood and betrayal. I mean, throughout the whole story, it's no coincidence then that Niko finds himself colliding with the Ancelotti family across multiple fronts, almost as much as he clashes with the Russians and Dimitri, whether it's through Jerry McReary, who has Niko kidnap Grace Ancelotti, the daughter of Don Giovanni Ancelotti, or through Phil Bell, who ropes him into operations that also weaken the family standing. The Ancelottis take repeated hits, and Niko is usually the one delivering the blows. Even the diamond deal, meant to be the conclusion to a long chain of chaos, is derailed when Ray Bulgarin shows up once again, blowing up the exchange that involved Niko and Packy returning Grace in exchange for the diamonds that were previously stolen by Luis Lopez. Another opportunity lost, another mess in a city that never lets anything end cleanly. By the time Niko is concluding his work with Gravelli, he's damn near embedded himself in every major power struggle, being used by federal agents, aging mob bosses, and feuding families alike. And with every job, his enemies grow, but so does his proximity to the truth and the person he came to Liberty City to find. The person that's handed to him on a silver platter, courtesy of the United Liberty paper contact.
Bellic, I have your man. He's been flown in. We're going to drop him in the airport cargo area for you.
No more jobs? Is that it? Am I out?
You're out. You've done good things for us, and we are grateful. That said, I've given you a lot of protection. From here in, you're alone. Goodbye.
All of the violence, all the dead ends, all the deals with dangerous people, it's finally led to this. After everything Niko's done for the United Liberty paper, taking on quiet operations under the banner of national security, the favor he was eventually promised is finally being honored. The contact, cold and calculating as ever, comes through. He's not only found Darko Brevic, but he's having him flown into Francis International Airport just for Niko. There's no more searching for Niko, as the man's going to be handed right over to him. For years there were rumors that Darko was hiding out in Switzerland maybe. Even Bernie believed he was there. And John Gravelli echoed that same sentiment, but the truth didn't matter. Wherever Darko had been hiding, he was on his way here now, and Niko would finally have the chance to face the man whose betrayal shattered everything. After ending the call, Niko reaches out to Roman, telling him what's happening, that it's finally time. The man who's haunted him for so long is arriving in Liberty City, and Roman doesn't hesitate. He tells Niko he's coming too. It's a small moment, but a powerful one that extends up to and during Niko's confrontation with Darko. Because throughout their story, Niko's been the protector, fighting, killing, enduring, all to keep Roman safe. But now, Roman steps into that role. Seeing the weight his cousin is carrying and refusing to let him bear it alone, he knows how much of Niko's identity has been shaped by this unresolved wound. It's not just revenge, it's everything Niko's been living for. And Roman, more than anyone, knows how dangerous closure can be, especially for someone like Niko. So they head to the airport together, not just to finish what was started, but so Niko doesn't have to finish it alone. Throughout the game, Niko's trauma is ever present. The scars of war, the betrayal that cost him his friends, and the life of violence he's built in the aftermath. It's all left him hollow. But it's only on the way to confront Darko Brevic that Niko truly opens up. For the first time, he lays everything bare. There's no rage in his voice, no fury driving his words, just uncertainty. He admits he doesn't know what this moment will give him, if it will change anything, or if killing Darko will simply be one more body behind him. He talks about the day his friends were ambushed, how everything good and innocent in him died with them. Since then, his life has been defined by death. Not because it's what he chose, but because it's the only thing he believes he's capable of. The only avenues left to him since his friends were killed. He questions his own worth, asking Roman what he's even good at. There's a quiet desperation behind the question, as if he's hoping for something, anything to hold on to.
In some way, our friends from the village were lucky. I lost myself that day too. Everything that was good and innocent in me died along with them. If I could live those hours again, I think I would have preferred to be buried in the pit along with everyone else. This is all that is left of me. What am I good at, Roman? What is my trade? I deal in death. Because that is all that is open to me.
It's hard hearing someone usually in control in his own way, confident and sarcastic, lose himself to such emotional depth of pure loss. But Roman, always the optimist, doesn't hesitate. He tells Niko that he is good, a good cousin, a good man. That despite everything Niko's lived through, there's still integrity in him. Still something human, something worth saving. Roman doesn't ask Niko not to go through with it, but he does beg him to understand that the killing has to end. That if there's ever going to be a real future for either one of them, it has to be one that isn't built on pain and revenge. because that's what this moment is all about. Not just ending a chapter, but beginning the possibility of something better, a cleaner, brighter, more honest life for both of them. Niko hears him, but he's not ready to talk about redemption or forgiveness. Not yet. First, there's one last thing he has to do. Once Darko's dealt with, then they can talk about what comes next. As the cousins arrive at the airport, a van pulls up, and without ceremony, Darko is shoved out of the back, hitting the ground. The vehicle speeds off as quickly as it appeared, leaving Niko standing face to face with the man who shattered his life, left alone to decide what to do with the past, now delivered to him like a gift wrapped in pain.
You remember me?
Pussy me. Не познаем te. I don't know you.
Yes, you do. I'm the one who survived.
Niko. Hello.
Reci mi zašto?
Zašto?
Zato što smo bili prijatelji. Svi smo odrasli zajedno. Mitar, Dragan, Goran, Mio. Mogu da nastavim. Sviju, a?
We were friends, but I had other friends. Friends that Goran and his guys killed. My fucking neighbors! Because of what? Because of shit! Lies! Fucking lies!
So that makes it okay to stab your friends in the back?
When everything you believe is shown to be shit, you make strange choices.
Fuck you! Strange choices? How much?
1,000.
You killed my friends for $1,000.
How much do you charge to kill someone?
You ruined me, you fuck!
I needed the money. I had problems.
You're a fucking junkie!
Kill me then! You fucking hypocrite. Trust me. You'll be doing me a favor. Ah!
As Darko stumbles to his feet, broken and barely recognizable, Niko confronts him with the names of the friends they lost. Real people, not faceless soldiers or casualties of war, but men they laughed with, trusted, bled beside. Niko doesn't let their memories fade into silence. He throws their names at Darko, forcing him to remember the lives he betrayed, the men he sold out. For Niko, it also feels as a way of reclaiming them, refusing to let them be reduced to a footnote in someone else's guilt. It's a scene that still surprises with how deeply sad it is, especially for a Grand Theft Auto game. For years, Niko had imagined this confrontation as a climax of a long, painful journey, but when he learns the truth that Darko betrayed them for only $1,000, just enough to feed a habit, the rage gives way to heartbreak. His voice cracks under the weight of that realization that everything he lost, everything he became, all for someone who didn't even think it through. Just a junkie desperate for a fix. And Darko, for his part, doesn't even beg for forgiveness, nor does he offer much of an explanation. Instead, he'd greet Niko's fury with a hollow, mocking tone, asking how much Niko charges to kill people now. It's a question meant to wound, to reflect something ugly back at Niko, making him seem no different. A man who spent years chasing vengeance, killing for cash, who was hurting others while trying to find the person who hurt him. And in a twisted way, he's not wrong. Since that day, Niko's become exactly what he once despised. A killer shaped by betrayal, surviving through violence, leaving wreckage behind in the name of justice. While there is that reflection, the venom in Darko's voice barely conceals what's underneath. He's not a man trying to escape punishment. He's already living that. His body's worn, frail, wrecked by addiction. His mind seems even worse off, haunted by more than just the ambush that was his fault and destroyed Niko's life, but there's a weight in his voice, his eyes, that suggest the betrayal of Niko's friends may not be the only sin on his conscience, and maybe not even the worst one. In the end, it's clear Darko wants to die. Whether by Niko's hand or his own, it doesn't matter. He has nothing left. He's not resisting this moment, he's welcoming it. And that alone forces Niko to see him not as a monster, but as a man already broken long before this confrontation ever happened. In the end, it's up to the player, whether if Niko kills Darko or spares him. Honestly though, both paths lead to the same truth, that vengeance was not the answer. If Niko pulls the trigger, the number of bullets he fires says a lot. He unloads the kind of fury no one else in the game receives. Not even those who arguably hurt him much more. Not Faustin, not Dimitri, in either the revenge ending or the deal ending when Roman's death was because Dimitri tried to kill Niko at Roman's wedding, or even Pellegrino, who in a state of anger launched a drive-by shooting killing Kate at Roman's wedding. The fury Niko releases in this moment, it's just a reflection, a reminder of the years of grief, guilt, and hopelessness that he's been holding in and that's been holding him together for so long. After Darko's dead, Niko's lost, admitting he feels just as empty as he did before. He hoped revenge on Darko would fill a void that has been there since everything happened. He was trying to get rid of this emptiness, but now it's just there with no idea on where to begin picking up the pieces. His death didn't give Niko any substance he hoped it would. But if you spare Darko, it's not mercy that Niko grants him. It's a greater understanding that Darko is suffering enough as it is. Despite not killing Darko, taking every fiber of his being, Niko confesses that killing him would just mean another person from Niko's village is dead. It won't bring him the closure he was after, it won't bring anyone back or change anything, and as he says, the only people that truly get closure are the ones who are dead. In a way, even in life, he and Darko are suffering in their own ways, but as Roman points out, at least Niko can find comfort and pride in taking that initial step of finally letting revenge go, walking down the path of healing and moving forward. It's a great thing that Roman is here, because he is that guiding light for Niko, so to speak. Regardless of whatever the player's choice is in sparing or killing Darko, Roman pushes his cousin to start focusing on rebuilding, to search for his fulfillment, and to seal up that emptiness he says he has through healthy avenues now, to stop the killing and look towards the future, a future where hatred, revenge, and pain is no longer a constant or a driving force. Those are anchors meant to be shed and left in the past.
I've had some trouble telling right and wrong apart before. After the war, I was involved in a life I felt was not for me. Those decisions became very difficult. Recently, I have tied up a lot of loose ends in this city. My past does not haunt me in the way that it used to. I've tried to separate myself from it. And I'm ready to try to be good.
Technically speaking, Niko's story is over with Darko's confrontation. I say that because much of Grand Theft Auto 4's story is driven forward by Niko's determination to find the person responsible. At first, it was narrowing down which of the two other survivors was the traitor, and when Niko pinpointed Darko as the man he was looking for, then it became a matter of finding the right connections, doing the right jobs, and learning more of the complex power plays at work behind the scenes here within Liberty City. However, while the main story is about Niko's closure or revenge for his past, there's one more mission in the game that determines his future. I haven't spoken much about the Peggerinos in this video, and Niko does help them for the last quarter of the game. And the reason I haven't talked about them is because they never truly were important in Niko's story for closure or revenge, at least not in the way the McRearys or UL Paper were. The only real value the Pellegrino crime family ever offered came through Ray Bocchino, who was the one to finally provide Niko with the lead he needed to find Florian. Outside of that, they were just another dead end. While Niko seemed to prefer working with Phil Bell and found him more reliable than most, it still led nowhere in terms of finding Darko. Jimmy Pellegrino himself was chasing relevance, desperate to be seen as more than a mid-level player, a position he was stuck in, so much so that when Niko's government contact and John Crivelli learned that he was working with Jimmy Pellegrino, they both laugh in his face, as if to say Niko should have known better than to expect anything of value from a man like that. And the troubling position Jimmy was in was one that really screamed, "I can't help myself, how could I help you?" to Niko. His house was believed to be constantly under surveillance by law enforcement. Jimmy's attempt to have a sit down with another crime family to plead his case, to get them to put in a good word so he could be on the commission, boosting his power and respect, fell apart when the sit down turned out to be an attempted hit job on his life, which then transitioned into a small turf war. The climax of Pellegrino's jobs would be killing Ray Bocchino, believing he had turned state, and assassinating Pellegrino's former bodyguard, who happened to be always wearing a wire at Jimmy's house. The man was on life support after suffering a heart attack and under heavy police security. Niko would stroll in and pull the plug. Similarly to what happened to Manny's body after he was killed by Elizabetta, Niko strolling into a hospital and taking a man out on life support has just always been one of those actions that just stood out. Again, it's hard to pull hairs on morality in a Grand Theft Auto game, but watching a man violently convulse in a hospital bed after Niko says how tired he looks to go to sleep, followed by a shootout with police in a hospital's emergency room, is hard to forget. But much of this work is just another detour, more of a distraction from the path that mattered most at the time, which was finding Darko. Once Darko was finally confronted and dealt with, Pagarino's bigger role is in the end, in the game's finale. Jimmy would order Niko to take part in a heroin deal with Dimitri Rascalov, promising a vast sum of money in return. Now, Niko would initially flat out reject the deal because of Dimitri's previous attempts to kill him and Roman. Him and Jimmy would end up getting into a back and forth until Niko relents and agrees to get Jimmy to just shut up. But when he's finally by himself, he would call Roman first and then Kate to get their opinions on whether or not Niko should take the deal. In hindsight, the phone calls Niko receives before the final choice each carry weight in their own way. Roman, ever the optimist, encourages Niko to take the deal. There's a kind of naive excitement in his voice. He's already heard that Niko and Dimitri might be working together again, and he assumes that means old wounds have been healed. That Niko has not only moved on, but completely forgiven Dimitri. But Niko quickly reminds him of what Dimitri has done. Not just the betrayal, but the kidnapping, the torching of their apartment, and the destruction of Roman's cab depot. Roman will brush it off, saying he's already got a better apartment now, and with the money Niko gets from this deal, he can get an even better one. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand Roman's logic, which is insultingly simple: to just take the cash, to look forward, and move on. What he doesn't realize is that in his desperation for that better future that he thinks the money can provide, he's asking Niko to betray himself. He even unknowingly feels Niko's anger when he reveals Dimitri's location, which then gives Niko another option. Instead of accepting or rejecting the deal, he can just go straight for Dimitri and kill him, ending the threat permanently. In contrast, Kate's response is grounded in principle, not optimism. It's almost ironic considering she's surrounded by crime through her brothers. But Kate has always stood apart from their lifestyle, even condemning the world they're all a part of and holding on to the idea that something better, something honest, is still possible. And that's a notion she continues to hammer home inside Niko whenever you go out on dates with her. But when Niko tells her about the offer, working with the very man who betrayed him, a man he swore to himself to never work with again, Kate doesn't hesitate. She tells him not to go through with it. No amount of money, no promise of a better life, not even for Roman, is worth doubling back on your own principles. If he accepts, she warns he won't just lose her respect, but he'll lose his own. He'll have to live with what it says about the kind of man he's become. Two people, two very different responses. One rooted in self-preservation and the other in morality. And Niko, torn between the hope of peace and the weight of who he has become, is left to choose which future he can live with. A future that no matter what starts in tragedy. Roman's wedding is the following day, and based off player choice determines who dies on Roman's wedding day, if it's Roman or if it's Kate. I think something can be pulled from both cases. If you choose to take the deal, at first it does feel like Niko finally made the right choice. There's a sense of calm, a long-awaited moment of peace. He even seems relieved to admit that holding on to hatred might have been foolish and that maybe, just maybe, it's time to move forward. And Roman has certainly always reinforced that idea, an idea that's only growing because now he's sending a stream of texts, pushing Niko to consider the bigger picture, a future filled with money, stability, and a new life with his soon-to-be wife. And after everything, the trauma, the betrayals, the blood spilled, it's not hard to understand why Niko might lean into that, especially when you consider the conversation he had with Roman after his kidnapping back in Bohan. The one where they both agreed that revenge couldn't be the future, and that maybe it was time to let go of everything that had poisoned their lives for so long. And after finding Darko, his conversations with Roman to find healthier outlets and avenues for that fulfillment that he desires, to stop holding on to hatred, pain, anger, and looking back on everything that's happened to him and to look forward, all things considered, it genuinely feels like growth. The first turning point, but it doesn't last. The deal quickly unravels when Dimitri betrays Niko again, just as he had done the first time. After arriving at the buyer's compound with Phil Bell to finalize the exchange, Niko receives a call from Dimitri, who tells him that he had the buyer's men killed. He offers no apology, just a joyful warning that Niko and Phil better be ready for a fight. The pair are locked inside enemy territory. Niko and Phil understand that escape won't be easy, but since they're already inside, they might as well go after the cash. As expected, a brutal firefight erupts that ends in a chase when one of the buyers escapes with the cash. Niko and Phil would pursue, take him down, and finally recover the money, with the mission concluding by Niko driving Phil to his hideout, taking his cut of the deal, and cutting all ties with the Pellegrino crime family. The illusion of peace was shattered again, but the cost of choosing the deal hasn't been paid just yet. At first, it doesn't seem like there are really any major consequences. After the deal, Niko would call both Kate and Roman to let them know what he decided. Roman is thrilled, relieved that Niko went through with it. He only sees the silver lining. They survived. They got the money, and now, with that chapter closed, they can finally celebrate his wedding. It's obvious Niko, however, doesn't feel the same. He's uncertain if he made the right choice, and his voice carries a quiet confusion, maybe even a little defeat. He was nearly killed again because of Dimitri's betrayal, and deep down, he knows he should have seen it coming. But Roman reminds him that he's alive. The deal may have gone sideways, but they still walked away with something. Niko, wary but unwilling to dampen Roman's joy, chooses not to argue. He gives a subdued response, acknowledging that today is about him and Mallory, and that, for their sake, he'll try to be happy. The call with Kate, though, is different. When Niko tells her what happened, she's furious. She can't believe he went against his instincts and he allowed himself to trust Dimitri, a man who betrayed him before and nearly destroyed everything, even getting another opportunity to attempt to get Niko killed. To her, this wasn't just about the money, it was about what Niko was becoming. She wants no part of it. It's as if it's a second punch in the gut. He already swallowed his pride and nearly got killed. He might be richer, but he still lost a part of himself. And so he's left at a crossroads. Praised by one, pushed away by another. And the true cost of his decision is only just beginning to show. Kate refuses to attend Roman's wedding. It's not out of spite, but because she can't stand to be near Niko right now. But the real price Niko has to pay isn't him swallowing his pride, going back on his own oath, and being pushed away by someone he genuinely cared for and was beginning to very much respect, but Roman's life is. The following day at Roman's wedding, after the procession, while everyone is outside the church celebrating, a hitman would walk up to Niko, giving him a gift from Dimitri. The two men will wrestle, during which rogue shots are let off, and they end up hitting and killing Roman.
Niko Bellic? Yes?
Okay, thank you.
A gift from Dimitri Rascalov.
Oh my God!
Bomba clad. Yo, Niko! Calm down, man. Yo. Easy.
He told me to leave it. I left it.
Niko, get up, man. Get up.
Oh,
Gotta
man.
get you out of here, man. Police them soon come. Don't worry, man. Me find Dimitri, me call you. Leave.
Okay.
The death of Roman clearly hits Niko hard. The look of hopelessness in his eyes as he clears out every single bullet of the gun into the hitman, followed by the kicking of his corpse and acknowledging that he did what Roman said. He left it, and now Roman lays dead. Niko had good intentions, but it ended with the reminder that he should have followed through with his instinct, never working with Dimitri again and clearing up that one loose end. Now, Dimitri took the one thing he had left, the only family, his only moral compass, the one constant pushing him to do better. Now, there isn't much apart from how I said earlier in the video. That little Jacob's friendship with Niko is proven with his help in both endings. Thanks to him, he finds some of Pellegrino's men to tail back. In the case of the deal, it's just them two chasing the men. And as they tail them, Niko's rage at letting Dimitri betray him again and his remorse for everything that's happened to Roman since his arrival in the city is much of the conversation that takes place between him and little Jacob. Niko would also admit that revenge is what drove him all along. It's the very reason that brought him to Liberty City in the first place, that he let it build up inside him for years, slowly poisoning everything good inside him. And now, standing in the aftermath of Roman's death, he knows he can't let that happen again. He refuses to let it happen to himself, to Mallory, or anyone else who loved Roman. And that's what drives him to now kill Dimitri once and for all. Niko would eventually storm the compound where Pellegrino and Dimitri were holed up in, cutting through their men with brutal precision. There was no hesitation, no mercy. And as Niko finally reaches the staircase to reach the rooftop, he finds Dimitri doing what Dimitri does best, betraying someone else. He shoots Pellegrino in the head, revealing he never intended to share anything. The heroin, the profits, it was always going to be his alone. It's the final betrayal. One more in a long line of treachery that defines the kind of man Dimitri has always been. He would then flee to the docks, trying to escape by helicopter. Niko, after failing to climb on board, would follow by boat, until Jacob arrived with the helicopter, finishing the final leg of the pursuit by helicopter. In the chase, both would receive damage, forcing Niko to crash land and Dimitri's helicopter to perform an emergency landing. Ironically, bringing this all to an end at the foot of Liberty's proudest symbol, near the Statue of Happiness, a cruel irony. As Niko's final words to Dimitri is a reminder of the snake he is, the person who betrayed his best friend, and everyone else who ever trusted him. But Dimitri just quietly calls him a dick. It's an ending where there's no redemption, no negotiation, just sadness. As little Jacob walks up to Niko, his last words is just how Roman never hurt anyone. And the camera pans away with the credits rolling.
Welcome to America. Speak English. You're a strange man. You killed your best friend. You betrayed everyone who ever came in contact with you. You killed my cousin. I guess the survival of the fittest thing really meant a lot to you.
Come on, Niko, man. Get out here. Let's go. Come on. Wagwan. Come on, let's go.
Roman never hurt anyone.
I know. Let's go, man. It's over. You won.
If you choose the revenge ending, it's Pellegrino here instead of Dimitri. And Niko's reason for going after the man was because of Kate's killing at Roman's wedding, instead of Roman dying and Niko pursuing Dimitri. Kate's death, in a way, feels sadder and more tragic. I mean, Roman is Niko's only family, but Kate seemed like Niko's only genuine future. The drive from her house to Roman's wedding, the dialogue between him and Kate shares a lot in terms of how much Niko liked her, how much dealing with Darko and Dimitri really meant for him personally to turn over a new leaf. Now, depending on your relationship with Kate, if you went on dates with her and it's high or not, the specific wording changes, but the sentiment is still the same. It's quite obvious that Niko's hit this point where, as he says, his past doesn't haunt him anymore. If your relationship status with her is high, though, I want to point out he's much more direct. Their relationship is much more developed. Kate would joke around with Niko, commenting about how she's never been to a wedding with a lowlife like Niko, and she hopes he doesn't let off a couple pop shots in the air as celebration. Niko would joke around along with her. The two of them will make jokes about him robbing nuns or taking a collection plate if he's in the mood. It's a subtle nod of how the two of them can genuinely be themselves. Kate's surrounded by people very similar to Niko because of her brothers, and Niko, well, Kate knows exactly what he is, what he was, the life that he has led. They would get on the topic of something a little more sentimental, of how the church Roman is having his wedding at is the same church Kate's brother's funeral was at. She would talk of how he wasn't a good person, but she wishes he was happy in his life, and how that happiness she hopes he found was in the right person. How the right person can make your life wonderful just like the wrong person can ruin it. And that's when Niko shares his past, surrounding himself with the wrong people, doing the wrong things, consumed by his anger, and he's over it. He's ready to move on and surround himself with good, honest people. He's ready to try to be good, and if he's with the right person, then maybe it'll be easier. Of course, he's alluding to Kate. He's more direct if the relationship is high. If it's low, Kate is more talkative, sharing she's only intending this wedding for Niko, hoping he can be good and saved, and she's ready to take a chance on him. Both end with Niko promising to treat her right and protect her, but he fails.
Yes, okay. There we go. Okay, yes, we are married.
You fucking double-crossing immigrant shit!
Go down. Oh, come on out of this blood clot. Niko, come on. Oh, somebody call an ambulance.
Call a fucking ambulance!
She's dead!
What? Oh, shit. Shit, shit!
She told me to leave it. I thought I had. I thought it was over.
It's never over, Aya.
Niko, you can't blame yourself.
Of course I can! She's dead!
Easy, easy, your brother, man. Easy. Calm down, man. Calm down.
Niko, you have to get out of here.
Yes, go on, man. Go on, man. We have to leave, man. Just leave.
Get out of here.
Don't
Go.
worry, we take care of this, man.
Okay, okay.
He had a fleeting moment of something more, letting go of hatred, anger, revenge, celebrating in the day of his cousin, and looking forward to something beautiful and positive with Kate, until Pecorino drives by with an AK-47 gunning her down, leading to practically the same outcome. The only difference in little Jacob finding Pecorino's men with Kate dying is Jacob and Roman are present, and Jacob being solidified as someone Niko can genuinely rely on. Outright telling Niko that just because he lost Kate doesn't mean he lost everyone, he still has him and Roman. In the conclusion, by the Statue of Happiness, Niko confronting Pecorino seems to be much more intense by comparison, with him demanding why he killed Kate, and before finishing off Pecorino, he jokes of how the commission that Pecorino was so desperate to join all saw him as a fat joke, laughing in his face, spitting on his legacy, rubbing the dirt in the only wound he appeared to have left. And unlike Dimitri, where he and Jacob quietly stand over him without letting off any final shots, with the ending on Pecorino, Niko would deliver one clean shot to the head.
I told you to leave me alone.
I give the orders here. Me!
You're not looking so good there, Jimmy.
Screw you.
What the fuck did she ever do to you?
I wanted you immigrant dipshit.
Big talk. You want to know something funny?
Not really.
The commission, the old families, I know some of those guys. And they thought you were a fat fucking joke.
Whatever.
A joke!
Cousin!
Yeah.
You did it.
Really? I don't know. What did I do?
But we're done. Now we can start making money. Freely.
I suppose so.
We won, man. We won!
It appears as if he was about to unleash even more rounds into his body, but because he puts the AK-47 back down and just stares at him, I take that as a sign as him still letting go of the revenge, the hatred, the anger of what he lost. There's still that sadness, but still a tragedy. As he holds off that outburst just thinking, Jacob and Roman appear, as if it caught Niko off guard in a way that snapped him back to reality. Roman claims they did it. They won. They can start making money again free. But Niko still sounds unsure. His future, the best chance he had at one, the first time he was open and ready to be with what he believed was the right person, was dead. And maybe in a way that was a mirror of his inability to protect the squad mates he lost so long ago. While Niko's arrival in Liberty City was all about closure and revenge, doing whatever and getting involved with whoever it took to achieve that closure, Liberty City was its own beast that did not forget. Niko may have gotten what he wanted, but he doesn't leave without his own payment. The camera pan to the Statue of Happiness reminds us that his freedom, his liberty, drives home his final lesson. He has to learn to live and honor the people he's lost in a healthier way that doesn't involve killing or continuing down the path of self-consuming rage.